Hajime is a powerless, auraless, and maidenless high schooler who gets bullied all the time for being weak. One day, his entire class gets summoned to become heroes and save the kingdom of Tortoise. But even in this world, Hajime remains a loser, because while his classmates all got legendary skills and abilities, all he got was transmutation. So the best he can do is move rocks. One day, as the class ventures into the labyrinth to train, Hajime tries to fend off a monster, but he lacks the sword skills to do so, so he ends up needing to be saved by a Managawa who beheads it in one swing. Hajime comes over just to mock Hajime for being useless, but then he gets pissed because everyone else actually cares about Hajime even though he's weak. It's almost like they like him because he's a good person, something Hajime wouldn't understand. Anyway, a Managawa's strike revealed some crystals hidden in the wall, and Meld recognizes them as Gland's crystals, which are really valuable. But it's strange to find such a large cluster of stones, so he tells everyone to stay away from it until he checks if it's safe. But of course, Hayame's monkey brain completely ignores the warning and goes for the shiny stone, triggering a trap that teleports everyone to a boss battle room. Meld immediately realizes that the situation is bad and he knows they stand no chance of surviving, so he yells for everyone to get to the staircase as soon as they can while he and the guards hold off the monsters. They do their best to keep the monster back with a barrier, but the behemoth is too strong, so it breaks through with ease and nearly causes the bridge they are on to collapse. If the bridge collapsed, everyone here would have fallen to their death, but Hajime comes in clutch and uses his transmute skill to keep the bridge standing and slow the behemoth down, but it won't last for long, so he urges everyone to run away while they still can. Thanks to him, all of his classmates were able to make it off the bridge safely, but the behemoth is starting to break through Hajime's rocks, so Captain Meld tells everyone to cast spells to buy Hajime enough time to escape. They all do as instructed, and Hajime starts running to get off the bridge, but just when it looked like he was going to be alright, one of the blasts from Hajime heads straight towards him, and Hajime is sent falling to his doom while his classmates look on in horror. Hajime manages to survive the fall, but he is now deep inside the labyrinth, so he tries to find his way out before he runs into a terrifying monster. Unfortunately, he immediately runs into this bunny, and although at first it didn't look that dangerous after seeing it fight, Hajime is terrified for his life. He tries sneaking away before he gets spotted, but he accidentally trips, alerting the bunny to his presence. The bunny is about to kill him, but then it senses something even more terrifying and it doesn't want to stick around to find out. Unfortunately for the bunny, it got caught and was eaten almost instantly by a giant bear monster, and after taking care of the bunny, it sets its sights on Hajime. Hajime tries his best to flee, but the bear manages to slash off one of his arms, and then it proceeds to eat Hajime's arm right in front of him to be extra disrespectful. Hajime desperately tries to crawl away, but he ends up backed against a wall with nowhere to go. But then, as his life was flashing before his eyes, all of his years of Minecraft come back, so he starts digging down with his skill to hide in a hole. The bear keeps chasing after him, so Hajime frantically places blocks to slow it down as he goes further into his hole. Eventually, he manages to break through to a connected cave, but even if he managed to escape the bear for now, he is still missing an arm and starving, so he won't last much longer. The only reason he is still alive is because he got lucky and found a monocrystal that naturally produces holy water with healing properties, but Hajime's body is still in so much pain that he wants to die and end his suffering already. His mind starts racing to find someone to blame for his situation in his dying moments. He remembers how one of the blasts from his classmates was aimed at him instead of the monster, and it looked really deliberate, but Hajime can't think of anyone who would want to kill him. Just then, Jerk's stupid face flashes before Hajime's eyes, and he realizes Jerk must have been the one who tried to kill him. He recalls that Kaori had warned him to not go on this mission the night before because she had a dream that something bad would happen to him, and now he's wishing he had listened to her. He knows no one is going to come save him, but he doesn't understand why he of all people has to suffer like this. First, he was brought to this world against his will, and now he has been betrayed by his classmates and left to fend for himself against these terrifying monsters. This is where Hajime finally snaps because he swears to himself that he will make it home no matter what, and anything or anyone who gets in his way will be killed. He's going to do whatever it takes to survive, and the first thing on the agenda is his food situation, so he decides to do some hunting. He goes outside and taunts two wolf monsters to trick them into chasing him. His plan works, and the two wolves end up following him all the way down through the cave, but they don't see the trap Hajime made and fall straight into a hole, after which Hajime proceeds to pummel them with rocks like a madman until they die. It's not the most elegant method, but it got the job done, so he begins eating and it tastes absolutely terrible. But even worse, he starts experiencing excruciating pain as the cells from the wolf meat start messing with his DNA. Hajime bends over and worries that this monster meat might be deadly, but then his body starts undergoing violent changes. Normally this would have killed any human, but thanks to the holy water, Hajime managed to survive the ordeal, and his body feels a lot lighter than it used to. He gets up and looks at his reflection only to find that his hair has turned white and his eyes are now red. As a result of his mutation, he now possesses a new mana manipulation skill, as well as the skill lightning field that the wolves possessed. He can't use it as well as the wolves could, but he can still create enough electricity to cook the rest of his meat with it. And it still smells awful, but at least he won't have to eat it raw anymore. The extra skills he got now allow him to appraise a rock simply by touching it, and after searching around a little, he finds something called a blast rock. It can be ground up and will cause an explosion if heat is applied, so Hajime believes he can craft a good weapon out of this. A weapon would make battles here a lot easier, so he immediately gets to work designing a gun with the blast rocks he found. He uses transmutation to form a gun barrel out of hard Tor rocks, and by filling bullets with the explosive blast rocks and accelerating them with his lightning skill, he is able to create a gun with high-powered explosive rounds, allowing him to easily defeat monsters like that rabbit from before. He then drags the rabbit corpse back to his cave and starts eating, but monster meat still tastes terrible. On the bright side, it did increase his level and granted him new skills like quick step and aerodynamics for extra mobility. With this, he is confident that he is strong enough to defeat any monsters, and he's got a grudge he needs to settle. He heads back to the area where the bear that ate his arm is, and as soon as he spots it, he uses aerodynamics to jump into the air and fires at the bear. Unfortunately, the bear manages to counter and knocks him down, leaving Hajime injured. But while this may look bad, Hajime made something special for a situation like this. He pulls out a flash grenade and throws it straight in the bear's face, resulting in a blinding flash of light. And while the bear is blinded, he gets some payback by shooting one of its arms off and chomping down on it to assert dominance, after which he puts a bullet through the bear's head to finally claim his victory. After eating as many beasts as possible, Hajime is now so strong that he can't level up from eating the monsters in this area anymore, but he still can't find a way up, so instead he decides to go down to find an exit. He recalls that this labyrinth is meant to have 100 levels, but there aren't exactly any signs around here, so he has no idea how long it will take him to reach the bottom. He begins mining his way down and soon stumbles upon a cave. But as soon as he turns his lamp on, he locks eyes with a lizard, and one look from it makes Hajime rock hard. He ducks behind a boulder and tries to slow down the petrification process with a potion, but the lizard is still coming after him, so he has to think quickly. As the lizard climbs over the rock, Hajime throws a small bottle at it, and the lizard gets its vision privileges revoked. And now that it is blind, it's an easy target for Hajime to gun down. Hajime keeps making his way through the labyrinth while slowly building his aura with each new monster meal. But while he's doing that, his classmates return from the kingdom to report what happened to the king, and Meld explains to the king that things didn't go as planned. Because Hajime couldn't keep his grubby mitts to himself, they ended up getting teleported down to the 65th floor. It's a miracle they managed to survive the incident at all, but unfortunately, one of the heroes, Hajime Naguma, wasn't so lucky. Word of Hajime's death has already begun to spread, and it's bad press for the kingdom, so the king orders Meld to act like this never happened, and the same goes for all the other heroes. Shizuka feels terrible about what happened, so she heads out into the courtyard to take her mind off it. But while training, Shizuka notices Hajime in the courtyard, and he seems really nervous, almost like he did something and is worried he's going to get caught. She recalls how back on Earth, Hajime was constantly picking on Hajime, and now that she thinks about it, he was probably jealous of all the attention Kaori gave Hajime instead of him, so she briefly considers the possibility that Hajime was the one who blasted Hajime. But she doesn't think that's possible since no one would be petty or stupid enough to kill their classmate over a crush. Right. Shizuka then goes to Kaori's room to see how she's doing, and Kaori finally wakes up from her coma. She has been unconscious for 5 days, so her memory is a little fuzzy, and all she can remember is the fact that they were fighting in the labyrinth. She asks Shizuka if Hajime is alright, but Shizuka doesn't say a word, and that silence tells her everything she needs to know. Kaori realizes that Hajime didn't make it back with them, and she is devastated and can't believe her dear friend is really gone. Meanwhile, Hajime is still trying to make his way through the labyrinth, and he still has no idea how long it will take for him to reach the bottom. But those doors look pretty promising, so he makes some more bullets for himself and gets ready to head in. Unfortunately, he has no idea how to open the door. He tries using transmute to see if he can just mine his way through the door, but he gets repelled, and all of a sudden, the statues next to the door come to life. Hajime saw this coming, and he's not about to let himself get jumped, so he shoots one in the head and kills it instantly. He then squares off against the second one, but when he tries to shoot it, his bullets have no effect whatsoever. The Cyclops seems to be using some sort of defensive magic to protect itself against Hajime's bullets, but fortunately, Hajime has the perfect strategy for getting through a magic barrier. He continuously fires at the Cyclops' barrier until it eventually shatters, making it an easy target and allowing Hajime to shoot it in the eye. And now that that's done, Hajime gets ready to see what's so important that it required 2 Cyclopses to guard it. He cuts the Cyclopses open and finds 2 mana stones in them, and he figures out that it has something to do with the door. So he puts the mana stones in the door and it unlocks it, revealing a glowing cube in the middle of the room. As the glow of the cube dims, it reveals a cute girl trapped within it, but this smells like a trap. So Hajime goes nope and turns around to walk out the door. The girl pleads with him to wait and asks for his help, but Hajime isn't an idiot, so he knows normal people don't end up trapped in a glowing cube deep in a labyrinth. He assumes she probably did something terrible to deserve a punishment like this, but the girl tells him he's wrong. She's trapped here because she was betrayed. Hearing the word betrayal strikes a chord with Hajime, so he suddenly cares about the girl's situation a lot more and asks her to explain what happened to her. Even if she was betrayed, it seems like overkill for someone to lock her all the way down here. The girl explains that she is vampire royalty and she was born with incredible power, which she always used for the good of her people. However, one day her ministers told her she was no longer needed and they would be ruling the kingdom in her place. The girl was honestly fine with handing over control of the kingdom peacefully, but her ministers feared her power and they physically couldn't kill her, so they decided to lock her away in this box. Hajime asks what she means by they couldn't kill her, so the girl explains that one of her abilities allows her to heal incredibly fast, so most physical damage is meaningless to her. And her second ability allows her to manipulate mana without needing a magic circle, so Hajime can see why she was so feared. In any case, he's emotionally invested now, so he decides to free her from her prison. He places his hand on the box and attempts to use transmute to break it down. It's not an easy job, and the old Hajime never could have managed it, but with his current strength, he keeps going until the box eventually disintegrates, releasing the girl from her prison. Now that she's free, Hajime asks her if she has a name, but the girl has no need for the name given to her by the people who betrayed her, so she asks Hajime to give her a new name, and he decides to call her Yui, because seeing her reminded him of the moon. Yui is really happy about her new name, so she jumps into Hajime's arms to thank him, but things have been going too well for him, so something was bound to go wrong at some point, and that's when several spikes are shot at him from the shadows, leaving Hajime severely wounded. The Yuis help the spikes are removed from Hajime's back. He hands her the bear pelt to cover up as the new duo faces up against their first enemy, a giant scorpion beast blocking their exit. He showers the scorpion with bullets, but its shell is too thick to be damaged. As Hajime pauses to think of a method to bypass its shell, Yui jumps off his back and bites his neck for blood. Her actions startle him, but he doesn't doubt her choice, so he uses his magic to mold a wall to buy her time as the scorpion uses the same magic to try and force its way through. All juiced up Yui casts an azure blaze which inflicts damage to its shell, but not enough to kill it. A second coordinated attack with Hajime on the top side of the scorpion's shell breaches it and fatally strikes the beast, celebrating their victory. The two bond over a campfire with some scorpion kebabs. Here, Yui is informed that all the vampires were eradicated 300 years ago. She shares that the labyrinth was built by beings called Mavericks, who rebelled against their gods and wanted to destroy the world but failed and flood into these labyrinths and are said to be hiding at the very bottom level. Their destination was now clear. A Maverick at the bottom held the key out using the scorpion shell. Hajime created high-caliber bullets for a railgun he crafted and named Schliegen. Surprised by all the foreign concepts this man is spouting, she asks him about his side of the story. The two journey deeper as he recounts the events that led him here. Saddened by her tale, he shares his goal of returning home, only to make her feel even more lost. Hajime invites her to join him on his journey, and she accepts without hesitation. Back at the kingdom, led by the level 50 classmate Amanagawa, the party prepares for another venture into the labyrinth. Meanwhile, Hajime and Yui flee from a horde of seemingly endless T-Rexes, each with a peculiar flower growing from its head. The strange sight leads them to believe the monsters are being controlled by a parasitic hive mind. They manage to break the line of sight and escape, at least temporarily, before beginning their search for the source of the hive mind that's hunting them. Along the way, Yui doesn't hesitate to take several sips from Hajime's neck. As they approach an entrance fiercely guarded by the dinosaurs, they begin to suspect their target is near. Inside the cave, green spores drift through the air. Suddenly, Yui loses control of her body and turns on Hajime. A flower sprouts from her head. From behind her, a humanoid spore creature, resembling a human female, uses Yui as a shield, casting magic through her to strike Hajime and leave him vulnerable to the spores. The monster celebrates her victory as a flower sprouts atop Hajime's head, However, the immunity he gained by devouring all those beasts kept him in control as the flower wilted, but the monster still uses Yui as cover, so the stalemate continues. Yui regretfully asks Hajime to shoot, who takes no time to hesitate and slays the beast with 2 bullets. His lack of tact awards him with her angry punches. The two rest at a campfire as Hajime eats the slain monster and Yui removes her clothes for no reason other than to sip more of Hajime's blood. The two journey deeper into the labyrinth and finally reach the door into the Maverick's chamber. Behind the door lies a grand chamber lined with towering crystal columns that lead toward a second door. As they make their way through, an enormous summoning circle flares to life, conjuring a massive hydra that rises to block their path. Each hydra head bears a unique color and magic corresponding to its color. The duo keeps up with the assault, but soon realizes that all their damage is negated by the white hydra's healing magic. Hajime and Yui attempt to focus their attack, but the other heads notice and stand in between them, protecting the white head from harm. Hajime draws the hydra's attacks, giving Yui a chance to shoot a powerful spell of the healer. However, her attack is blocked by the yellow head specialized in defense. After her failed attack, the black hydra head uses illusionary magic to make Yui believe that she is once again sealed and Hajime has abandoned her. Her screams cause Hajime to grab her and disengage. Yui snaps out of it and tells Hajime what she has seen. He then kisses Yui for the first time and reassures her they will win this fight and make it to the surface and back home together no matter what. They bond now stronger than ever. They hatch an attack plan to defeat the monster. Yui distracts the beast using powerful magic while Hajime grabs Schlagen and shoots a devastating beam that destroys all but the blue, red, and green heads. Without their healer, they now stand no chance against Yui's heavenly blaze, which eradicates the beast, or so they believed. A final silver head appears and targets Yui. Hajime jumps in and tanks the blast using his rifle and as much defensive magic as he can. The smoke settles and the rifle disintegrates. While Hajime falls unconscious to the ground, Yui grabs him and creates a barrier protecting them from the ensuing attacks. She manages to pull him far enough and give him all the holy crystal water she can find, but he still won't wake up. She grabs Hajime's gun and charges at the beast alone, but the bullets bounce harmlessly off its thick hide. The hydra blasts her back, leaving her wounded and calling out for Hajime. Her cries do not fall on deaf ears. Hajime rushes in, scooping her up and carrying her out of harm's way. The last blow he took cost him an eye. They coordinate an attack where Hajime drops the ceiling on the hydra and transmutes it into a conductive cage, while Yui shoots an azure blaze which is amplified by the trap surrounding the beast. It perishes under their combined force as the two lovers find a moment to rest. Meanwhile, the party headed by Amanagawa makes its way through the labyrinth, once more oblivious to their classmates' survival, all except Korei, who can still sense that Hajime has survived. Bandaged but at full capacity, Hajime wakes up with a strange, soft sensation in his palm. To his surprise, he finds himself in a bed with Yui inside a gazebo surrounded by a forest. He lets go of her cheeks and electrocutes her into waking up. Noticing his well-being, Yui celebrates and hugs Hajime with tearful eyes. After he's caught up about how Yui patched him up, they realize they are now in the Maverick's domain. They fetch some clothes and make their way to a mansion standing alone in the woodland scenery. An illusionary sky mimics daytime and nighttime above them. The couple make their way into the building and find many rooms sealed off. On the 3rd floor, they find an open room that begins to light up as they make their way inside. Across from them sits a skeleton dressed in fine wear, peering at a ritual circle in the middle of the room. Hajime steps into the circle seeking answers. It glows as the skeleton develops an illusionary cover of the human it once was, Oscar Orcus, the maverick who built this labyrinth. He congratulates the two on reaching this chamber and reveals that he is only a recording and will do no more than tell them why he and his fellowship did what they did after finding out the truth of this world. Meanwhile, on level 65 of the labyrinth, Amanagawa and his group are ready for round 2 of their fight on the bridge with the behemoth and his skeletal army. They spawn in, but instead of panicking, the group spreads out and does their respective roles in the fight. Attackers go in as mages and supports fulfill their duties, successfully fending off the monster's attack while dishing out their own. Their combined effort successfully defeats the behemoth, and so the skeletons begin to fall apart while the group rallies after their first decisive victory. Back to the MC, the recording begins to bid Hajime farewell. Oscar tells Hajime he will now inherit his powers and hopes that he will not use them for evil. A surge of information rushes through Hajime's head. The Mavericks were in truth liberators, and now he wields a form of ancient magic, creation magic, allowing him to give magic properties to raw materials to create artifacts. The first thing he does is teach Yui how to wield this magic. She learns it but fails to create artifacts herself. The two spend the following days snooping around the mansion. They find a book that informs them of how clearing the rest of the labyrinths will also yield ancient magic, which might help them return home. Later, the duo shares a bath together where Yui expresses her love to Hajime, who is still shy and awkward when confronted with the matter. Using the vast resources inside the mansion, Hajime crafts several tools to aid on their journey. Vehicles, weapons, a crystal to replace his eye and an arm, all using the creation magic he learned. After 2 months of prep, Hajime puts ring on Yui, cementing their relationship. The two prepare themselves and finally leave the labyrinth, ready with their unwavering bond to take on whatever the world throws at them, even against the gods that stand in the way of their goal. In the Risen Gorge Canyon, a busty bunny girl finds herself surrounded by dinosaurs while she runs around asking for someone to appear. Just then, Hajime's and Yui's ritual circle appears and the two drop in, scaring the dinosaurs away. They celebrate their successful escape while the two lovers gaze into each other's eyes. Their wholesome moment is ruined by the blabbering bunny beast woman charging their way before falling and getting her head stuck in the ground. They move on and try to ignore the nuisance, but she grabs onto Hajime and begs the two to save her family. Her request falls on deaf ears and the duo continues moving forward. Suddenly, a giant two-headed monster Dehedor returns and stands in front of Hajime, who takes it out with ease, much to the bunny girl's amazement. She introduces herself as Shia, the eldest daughter of the Helia Beast tribe. She pleads the two to help her race from being exterminated, and after a lot of begging, they finally agree to look into the matter, before she insults Yui's Opai's size as a way inferior to hers and gets blasted to near death for it. Shia was exiled from her tribe for the magic powers she held. Her power to see possible futures is what helped her come to where the duo would appear. She also saw the doom of her tribe on the horizon. The duo agreed to help her on the condition that she helps them navigate the Sea of Trees on their path to the next labyrinth. They reached the Beastman village just in time to save it from a group of flying dinosaurs. Her tribe had left the other Beastman tribes to support Shia after it was revealed that she has a magic similar to monsters, a fact detested by Beastmen who do not wield magic. Her tribe's weakness and lack of magic meant their struggle for survival was an extremely difficult one, but with Hajime and Yui's help, the task was accomplished with ease. Shia offers to join them on their journey, but the two reject firmly. But instead, seeing that none of her tribe are fit for combat, they spend the next few days training them so they are ready to survive. After rigorous training, Shia learns to enhance her physical attributes for combat and asks to join the couple on the journey, once again claiming to be in love with Hajime. Just then, her tribe returns, turned into bloodthirsty killers that know how to fend for themselves. Maybe a bit too well. The Beastman tribe leads the couple to the great tree within the Sea of Trees. There, a tablet asks them to present 3 more symbols similar to the ring they got from Oscar, the power of regeneration, and a beacon formed of bonds to unlock the door forward. Knowing what they need, the duo heads for the rest of the labyrinths in search of the other symbols. She recalls a memory of her mother telling her a story about a white shadow that lurks within the Sea of Trees, hidden from all. Moral of the story was to teach her not to fear everything different, and that one day she will meet special and wonderful people just like her. That is why she insists on going along with the couple while keeping it a secret. After she has succeeded in her training with Yui, Hajime allows her to join them, yet he tries to push her away one last time but fails. With a new member in tow, the trio bids the Beastmen's tribe farewell and continues their journey in search of labyrinths. Still in the Risen Gorge, the trio looks for the entrance to the labyrinth. Shia stumbles upon a strange sign, and when they gather around it, a voice echoes and welcomes them to Milady Risen's super-duper exciting labyrinth. There, Shia, by some stupid luck, once again stumbles over the secret entrance. Needless to say, this labyrinth has no lack of traps. Some spikes shoot out the wall, scaring Shia shitless. Aside from physical traps, the voice recording of Milady on its own is a form of torture to their ears. From boulders barreling down a narrow hallway, spinning saws from either side of the walls, a giant bottomless pit, even buckets falling on Shia's head, the maze was level S hazard, yet nothing that 3 adventurers couldn't handle. After a while and a lot of teasing by Milady, they enter a familiar room, the place they started at. After running in circles for a while, they reach a room with a door at the far end and suits of armor decorating the walls on either side. To no one's surprise, the suits begin to move and attack the trio. There's nothing special about them, but they do seem endless, so they rush towards the door and jump through onto a moving block. The block takes them up face to face against a giant iron golem with a smiley face drawn on it, claiming to be Milady Risen. According to Oscar's notes, Milady is as dead as he is, but the golem insists it is Milady. Milady's tone changes from playful to serious as she asks Hajime about his end goal. He tells her that he wishes to return to his world after the god of this world forced him here. Hajime asks her whether the rift crossing ancient magic is in this labyrinth. She returns to her playful speech and refuses to give an answer, which prompts our hero to attack with a missile barrage. Their clash begins. Melody's armor is very thick, which makes it hard to reach the core of the body. Her attacks cover a wide range but are easy to dodge. Hajime delivers a powerful blow that knocks the golem down, giving Yui the chance to freeze it into the ground. Hajime then uses a drill to stick a rod above the golem's core. Shia follows up by smashing her giant hammer on the iron rod, thus penetrating the armor and destroying the core. As the golem's power begins to fade, Melody gives Hajime a warning. Following the path he is currently on, he will eventually face the bastard gods they fought long ago and achieve god killer status. She bids them farewell and good luck on their journey as she disappears. Inside Melody's chamber, the trio finds yet another golem, a small one that Melody uses to greet them again. After a few smacks, she teaches the group gravity magic that only Yui is high enough level to use for now with a bit of training. With a second ring in Hajime's hand and some more valuable recourses squeezed out of her, Melody flushes the group out of the labyrinth back out onto the surface. With Shia drowned, Hajime gives her mouth-to-mouth to revive her, which she takes full advantage. But being the Chad that he is, our boy forcefully removes her and throws her back into the water. The trio, all wet from that experience, make their way to the nearby town inn for the night. Yui and Shia fight over a room with our MC, ending with Shia getting shot for saying out-of-pocket stuff. Inside the Foreign Adventurers Guild, the guild master Ilwa Chang hosts Hajime and his two companions. He had heard of their accomplishment of passing through the Raizen Gorge with ease and wishes to employ them for a request. Hajime declines at first, but is persuaded to hear him out on the condition that their exploits be kept hidden, so they maintain a low profile. His request is to find a missing party that led his survey in the northern mountains, specifically the son of Count Kugeta. Hajime accepts in exchange for status plates of their own, as well as the guild master's support if needed. The trio wastes no time and travels towards the last known location of the missing party. Along their way, they make a stop at a village where the teacher of the Isekai class named Ai taught the villagers how to plant and maintain rice fields, which the place is now famous for. Hungry for his homeland staple food, Hajime's party reaches the inn where his teacher and few of her students are resting. Before this point, Hajime had been believed to be dead by everyone who knew him before the incident in the labyrinth. However, mention of his name by Yui and Shia, as well as his familiar voice, makes it obvious to Ai, despite his drastic change in appearance. He tried to deny his identity, but his teacher was certain, so he finally admitted it. He gave her very vague answers as to what happened since he was last seen before one of the knights escorting Ai and her students insulted Shia and Yui, which got him a bullet to the shoulder. One of the students listening all this was someone who admired Hajime after he saved her on the bridge where this all started. Before moving on, Hajime made it clear to everyone around that he had cut ties with the group he came to this world with and all those they worked alongside. His goals were his own and none should stand on his way. Later that night, Ai was contemplating her meeting today only to be interrupted by none other than Hajime himself. In private, he reveals to Ai what he has learned so far and why he chose to cut ties with the kingdom. A long time ago, this world was ravaged by endless wars between all three races. The god ruling over them made them believe he was pursuing peace between the humans, demons, and beastmen, while in truth he was the puppet master inciting conflict for his entertainment. The Liberators were a group of people who realized who the cause of all this conflict was and tried to rid the world of their oppressors. However, this god had realized their intentions and turned the church and humanity against them, branding them as traitors. Sworn to protect their people, the Liberators did not fight back. They are the people now known as the Mavericks. The few members that survived the culling had flowed into labyrinths of their creation, waiting for someone capable of completing what they had set out to do. Hajime admitted that he didn't care about the mad god, he only aimed to get the ancient magic necessary to leave this world. Before he left, I told him that the priestess Kaori hadn't given up her search for him, which is when he revealed that what happened to him was no accident, but an attempt to take his life by one of her students, and that left her in shock. The following morning, Hajime's group is stopped by Ai and her students who insist on joining them so that she can hear in detail what has happened. Seeing that refusing won't work, he conjures up a vehicle for all involved and sets off into the mountains. The group makes their way into the mountain in search of the Count's son and one of Ai's students who had wandered off on his own. Using drones he crafted with his relic creation magic, Hajime tracks down a scorched field with obvious marks of battle and a crater left by a giant creature. They press forward towards a human signal further in the mountains behind a waterfall, and inside a cave they find Will Kudeta, the Count's son. Suffering minor injuries, he is delighted to have finally been found. Will tells them of his terrifying experience and how Group was slaughtered by a group of monsters, the worst being a black dragon. Hajime slapped some sense into him and brought him back on his feet. As they made their way beyond the red moon that loomed over them with the sound of impending danger, the same black dragon swoops in and commences its attack on the group. It unleashes a stream of flames that pin Hajime down as he shields his teacher and her students. At that moment, Yui uses Heavenly Blaze to stop the dragon and drops it to the ground. Shia follows up with her hammer attack but fails. Hajime orders Yui to protect the group so that he can focus on offense. The dragon seems to be focused on will, but the danger Hajime imposes quickly forces it to set its eyes on him. The two duke it out with Hajime obviously in a much stronger position using his vast arsenal. Soon after the dragon falls and Hajime readies the machine he used to penetrate the armor of Milady's golem so that he can finish off the beast. The dragon tries to escape, but Shia's hammer knocks it out. Hajime's knowledge of dragons leads him to believe that the only way to do damage to the beast is by attacking the one place without scales, the butt. Hajime grabs the giant rod and shoves it up the dragon's hole only to be met with feminine screams. The dragon announces that she is a dragon born and will reveal her intentions if the rod that Hajime keeps driving into her colon is removed. He doesn't accept and seeks answers before she can be relieved. The dragon reveals that she was headed to the vicinity to investigate the travelers from another world. While resting on her journey, a man in black robe cast mind manipulation magic on her in her sleep so that she would target and kill Will and his companions. Yui asks Hajime to spare the dragon as the killing was not of her will. The dragon herself begs him to remove the rod since her mana is almost depleted and she will return to human form, which would kill her in that state. With the rod forcibly removed and the dragon reverted into human form with a possible new kink, she reveals her identity to be Tio Claris of the Claris clan of Dragonborn. She warns the group that an army of thousands of monsters led by the man in black robes is headed for the town of Hajime's drones confirm that an army of 60,000 will be upon them in 2 days. His mission only being to save Will, Hajime refuses to face the army or its head figure. As it doesn't concern him, he sets off to return Will home with a new perverted and masochistic dragon born, unfortunately, joining his party. Ai implores her student to help face the army of monsters and save Yura from annihilation. Unable to refuse his teacher's request, Hajime accepts and begins his preparations to halt the assault. Defensive measures are taken, barricades are built, women and children are evacuated, while everyone left to fight eats and rests in preparation for battle. Night falls, and as Hajime cleans his rifle, Sonono approaches and thanks him for saving her life that day on the bridge in the labyrinth. He doesn't think much of it but gives her words of encouragement. A presence of a pervert lurks near as Tio comes out and asks Hajime a question. Tio asks him if his journey will continue after this fight and if she can join him. He refuses without wasting a second, but her masochistic nature takes it as teasing, making her an official member since she simply won't leave. Seeing as how the townsfolk aren't as reliable as necessary and want to give him a minor role, Hajime proclaims to the people in his rallying speech that Ai Sensei is a goddess, meaning their victory is certain and all credit for that should be given to her. Atop the barricade wall, Hajime's group initiates their long-range attacks, each using the most powerful attacks at their disposal. Tiva's attacks are especially powerful, however, her mana runs out quickly, and she helps herself to a nap. With his long-range bullets running low, Hajime and Shia charge in with Yui supporting from the rear. The two begin attacking battalion leaders to throw the army into confusion since only the monsters in charge are under the mind control spell. Their plan succeeds and the army begins to rout after suffering major casualties. Hajime then confronts the man in black robes who he captures and brings back to the town. Ai identifies the mysterious figure as Shimizu, the student who came with her group to Ur but went missing short after. Shimizu had made a contract with a demon he found in the mountains, hoping to gain tremendous power in exchange for Ai's head. She tries to reason with him and help him start over, but Shimizu takes advantage of her compassion and takes her hostage, asking Hajime to surrender his weapons, which is met with a resounding no. Shia's ability to see the future springs her into action as she attempts to block a bullet headed for Shimizu and Ai. The poison needle at Ai's neck makes contact as the bullet grazes Shia and penetrates Shimizu's abdomen. Hajime gives a dose of holy water to his poisoned teacher mouth to mouth because why not, and then heals Shia's wound as he approaches Shimizu. Ai begs him to heal her student. Hajime assesses the situation and Shimizu's intentions before putting him out of his misery, breaking his teacher's heart and telling her that his stance against his enemies does not change regardless of who they are. He and his party along with will depart to conclude their mission. On the way back, his companions realize how Shimizu was too injured to be saved and Hajime merely put him out of his misery as an act of mercy without Ai having to bear the burden of a student dying under her care. They all know Ai is extremely kind but not stupid. She will eventually accept the truth and forgive her dear student. Once again at the guild, Hajime and his companions deliver Will safely to Ilwa, who rewards them with the promised status plates, plus an additional one for their new member. As they all settle in their room for the night, Hajime notices a figure lurking in the alleyways of the town. Watching them, he isn't concerned by their activities, as he is confident that he can challenge even God if he gets in the way of achieving his goal. Hearing his words, Tao remembers her father's dying words to her, that although their true enemy, God himself, is powerful, but someone strong enough will appear one day to slay him and rid the world of his machinations. Those very words and the powerful force calling to her prompted her to seek otherworldly visitors outside of her clan's domain, leading her to meet the MC. Hajime and Shia go on to explore the town together, where they stumble upon an aquarium. Inside, they meet a familiar sentient fish, which they pass by while Melody flushed them out of her dungeon. Hajime and Layman hit it off, and after realizing they're the reason he ended up in this mess, they set him free without admitting it. Before Layman went on his way, he told the two about a gang of slavers who deal with beast folk and how they had a little mermaid in their hands, as well as he tells Shia to be extra careful due to her race as he sets off. On one side of town, Yui and Tio go shopping and bond over their appreciation for their companions. On the other side, Hajime and Shia bond over the fact that they both like Tio, but she's a pervert. Just then, Hajime senses someone under them in the sewers but feels like a weak and small child, so they go down to investigate. Detection of a person proved true as Hajime scoops up a passed-out girl who was kidnapped for auction by underground smugglers. Soon the smugglers realize the girl is missing and begin scouring the town for her. Meanwhile, Hajime and Shia bring the girl to the surface where she regains consciousness. They introduce themselves to Mew and hurry to nurse her back to health with a hot bath and food, before dropping her off with the city guard since their race is protected by the kingdom. Against Mew's wishes, they part ways as she cries for her big bro and big sis. Shortly after, a blast and smoke rise from the same guard post. Hajime and Shia rush back to find the guards dead and writings on the wall, ordering him to give them the bunny girl or Mew dies, which makes it clear to Hajime that these guys are now his enemies. As they rampage through the town, they regroup with Yui and Taiyo, who join them on their hunt for the slavers' hideout. They split up into teams of 2 and purge the whole city of slaver gangs as they look for Mew's location. Meanwhile, the auction begins with Mew at its center. In that moment, Hajime breaks in and puts 3 bullets in the organizer's head, picking up Mew and flying her out to see the fireworks as his companions raze all the slavers' hideouts to the ground. With the little girl now safe, Hajime takes her and regroups with his companions as she gives her hero a new title, Papa. Papa Hajime and his party make their way through a barren rocky land to the outpost town of Dorad. This is where it all started 4 months ago when he was last here with his classmates adventuring to Orcus Labyrinth. The group sits down with the outpost guild leader Lo Boavis, and that is when a guide breaks in to inform Lo that a demon was spotted in the labyrinth. Hajime identifies him as Endo, one of his former classmates. He begs him to come down and save the rest of his classmates that are now faced with the demon. As the hero's party reached the 90th level of the Orcus Labyrinth, they found no monsters in sight, only their blood splatters covering the ground. A red-haired demon lady walked out of the shadows and offered them a chance to join her, as Shimizu did. They declined to engage in combat with her myriads of powerful monsters, a chimera, ogres, and a spell-casting turtle pope. The group fought to the best of their abilities, but the demon's ability to heal the monsters meant they were fighting a losing battle. Their barrier caster was stabbed and seriously injured during the battle, and that is when Kaori's friend Shizuku ordered Endo to use his stealth abilities to flee and tell their captain Meld what had transpired. Endo succeeded in doing just that, but the chimera had chased him to the captain's location. He was ordered to flee once again, this time to the surface, to warn everyone about the demon menace they were facing. On the surface, Endo begs Hajime to save his former classmates despite his feelings for them, while underground the hero Amanagawa and his party manage to flee the demon. Their fear sows doubt between them as Hiyama wishes to join the demon to survive. Captain Meld reaches the hero's party only to be cut down by the demon and her chimera. The captain's death enrages Amanagawa into breaking his limits, killing the demon monsters and forcing her into a corner. However, a trinket of hers forces him to stop as he realizes she is human too. In that moment of hesitation, her pets attack and injure the hero. Shizuku tries to buy them time, but the demon's beasts prove to be too powerful as she also falls. Kaori rushes to save her friend, but with her mana depleted, there is nothing she can do other than to accept her and Shizuku's fate at the hands of 2 giant minotaur. Before the monster's attack lands on the 2 girls, a giant rod penetrates the ceiling and impales both monsters, killing them instantly. The dust of the impact clears as Hajime stands before them. All it took was 1 bullet for the behemoth to perish this time. As Hajime lands in front of his former adventuring group, Kaori instantly recognizes the identity of their rescuer, much to everyone's surprise, as he was supposed to be dead. As Yui, Shia, Tio, Mew, and Endo fall down and reach the party, monsters rally for another attack. Hajime orders his companions to spread out and protect Amanagawa's party as he single-handedly begins his onslaught against his new enemy forces. He wields his dual revolvers with skill as the monsters drop like flies. Kaori and her friends watch in astonishment as the man they knew as Nagumo Hajime tears through the monster hordes with unprecedented might. The Pope Turtle fires off a beam attack at Hajime, and using a relic shield, he deflects the attack at the demon woman, destroying the bird creature she used to heal herself and her forces. His companions easily fend off any attacks on the injured as the demon makes a last desperate attack against Hajime. She casts Crashing Jail, enveloping him whole. Concerned by what she saw, Miu calls out to her papa, which catches Kaori's ear. The demon makes a run for it, but Hajime blocks her retreat as he shrugs off her magic and walks up to her. He asks her how she got her hands on those monsters, but she refuses to answer, so he puts 2 bullets in her legs, which surprises his former companions. From what little he got from her, Hajime concludes that the monster spawning was a form of ancient magic that was lent by someone she knows. Seeing as how she was no longer any use, he aims to end her life. She warns him that her lover will seek revenge. As Amanagawa tries to convince him that she is no longer a threat, Hajime doesn't think twice before he puts a bullet in her skull. Hiyama saw what happened as panic sets in. With Captain Meld stabilized, everyone involved gathers around. Kaori can't believe Hajime is still alive and breaks down into tears while leaning on him as Yui and Shia stare with murderous intent. They all make their way back out of the labyrinth while Amanagawa and Hajime's moral compasses collide over the killing of the demon. Hajime makes it clear that he has no ties here anymore and will kill anyone who stands in his way, even them. He tells him that he did this because he owed Kaori, and once they're out, it's goodbye forever. After they reach the surface, Kaori gathers up her courage to confess her love to Hajime and her desire to join his party. He turns her down since his only love is Yui, but she still insists on tagging along to eventually win him over. Yui accepts her challenge and allows her to join to prove that she is Hajime's one true love. Kaori is now an official member of Hajime's party. After a bit of strangling over the papa's business, he tells her to get ready for their departure. The next day, Kaori bids farewell to Shizuku and the rest of her former companions as Hajime conjures a jeep with a car full of odd characters fighting for his love. Hajime and his companions set off to find a way back to his world, allowing nothing, not even God, to stand in their way. Hajime and his group are driving through the desert when all of a sudden they get attacked by a sandworm. And I don't know where Hajime learned how to drive like this, but he is doing a great job evading the worms. It'll be a problem if that thing manages to catch up to them, so Hajime decides to bust out his anti-tank missiles and fires them at the worms. The worms are reduced to large chunks of meat, so Hajime and the others can continue on their trip. But a few meters ahead, they spot a group of sandworms gathered around something. Hajime is curious, so he pulls up the car machine gun and starts blasting until every single worm is gone. And now that the path is clear, they can see that there is a man on the floor. Hajime normally wouldn't want to get involved, but as a priest, Kaori wants to help him, and Hajime honestly wants to find out how the guy managed to survive so long in the desert without getting eaten. They drive over to him, and Kaori examines his body only to find that he is suffering from extreme mana overload. Basically, he ingested some sort of poison that is making all the mana in his body go wild, so if he doesn't get help soon, he is going to die. For now, Kaori uses a spell to drain some of the guy's mana to stabilize his condition, but unless they find a cure for his illness, his mana will go out of control again soon. The man eventually wakes up, so they bring him into the car, and first he thanks them for saving his life. He introduces himself as Bizi, and he is the son of the Duke of Ankaji. Coincidentally, Ankaji is the city that Hajime and the others are heading towards, and from the way Bizi is acting, it looks like it's in some kind of trouble. Hajime asked Bizi to explain the situation. So Bizi tells him that a few days ago, the citizens of Ankaji began to suffer severe fevers and convulsions. They did some investigating and discovered that the oasis that the people of Ankaji rely on was poisoned, but they still haven't been able to figure out how it happened or who might be responsible. On the bright side, there is a cure for mana overload. The mineral known as Still Stone, which can calm a person's mana when ingested. Still Stone can only be found in the Gruen volcano. Normally, Bizi would have sent the adventurers of Ankaji to mine the Still Stone, but they are all suffering from mana overload, and even if they weren't sick, an ordinary adventurer wouldn't be able to make it through the desert since Ankaji is almost entirely out of drinking water. That's why Bizi took it upon himself to go look for help, but he ended up passing out due to mana overload. Luckily, he was fortunate enough to meet a group of gold-ranked adventurers, so he asked them to help save Ankaji. They soon arrived at the dukedom of Ankaji, and the situation here is just as bad as Bizi had told them. Countless people are suffering from mana overload and even more from dehydration, but Hajime and his group are ready to help. First of all, Yui uses her powers to create a pit in the ground, and after Hajime finishes paving the bottom, Yui uses magic to fill it with water. The Duke of Ankaji is amazed that Yui was able to create so much water in such a short amount of time, but using all that magic left Yui feeling drained, so she turns to Hajime and starts sucking his blood. Now that the water situation is dealt with, it's time to deal with the poisoned oasis, and as soon as Hajime takes a look at it with his demon eye, he figures out what's wrong. He pulls out a few grenades and chucks them into the oasis. A few seconds after the grenades explode, a slime monster emerges from the oasis. The Duke had no idea something like this was in their oasis, so Hajime explains that this thing is probably the source of the poison in the water, although he has no idea who put it there in the first place. But now all he needs to do is defeat it, so he aims his gun at the slime's magic core and fires a shot straight through it. The slime has finally been killed, so it won't be generating any more poison. But as for the poison that's already in the water, it's going to be a while before it gets decontaminated. Luckily, the oasis is connected to a freshwater spring, so eventually it should return to normal and the water Yui made should be enough to last until then. Back at the city's main hall, Kaori and Shia have been helping treat all the people suffering from mana overload, but the only way to cure them for good is with the still stone. Hajime agrees to go get some from the Gruin volcano. However, it's too dangerous for Miu to come with them, so Hajime asks Kaori to stay behind and take care of Miu while they are gone. They set off across the desert, and after tearing through a horde of sandworms, they eventually arrive at the Gruin volcano. The blistering heat is already starting to make the others uncomfortable, but Teo isn't bothered by it. After a bit of walking, they make it to the main entrance of the volcano, and soon after they walk in, Hajime spots some still stone on the roof of the cave. Unfortunately, it's only tiny pieces here, so it won't be enough to cure the people of Ankaji. If they want to find a sufficient amount of still stone, then it looks like they are going to have to go deeper into the volcano. They make their way to the bottom of the staircase, and from this point onward, they are stepping into uncharted territory, so they need to be ready for anything. Just then, a fire attack is thrown at the group, so Yui uses her magic to block it, and Hajime gets ready to kill the lava bull that's attacking them. But before he shoots, Shia asks him to let her handle it instead because she wants to test out the new hammer he made for her. Hajime agrees to let her handle the bull, so Shia charges forward, and with one powerful swing, she manages to completely shatter the bull's head. She's impressed by how effective the hammer is, but also kind of scared because this thing converts mana into kinetic energy, and the force it can create is unbelievable. After descending a little deeper into the volcano, the group manages to find a cave filled to the brim with still stone. There's more than enough to save all the people of Ankaji, so now the only thing they have to do is clear the great labyrinth inside the volcano. They ride a boat down the lava, and after nearly being burned alive by the lava falls, the group finds a hidden island at the base of the volcano. Hajime wants to go check it out, but all of a sudden, a fire blast is launched at them, so they are forced to ditch their boat. There are fire-spitting lava snakes guarding the room, so if they want to get to it, they are going to have to defeat all the snakes. There are 100 of them, so it's going to take a while. The group works together to destroy each snake's body and mana core, but just as Hajime finishes off the final snake, he is hit by a light beam out of nowhere. Hajime is still in one piece, but that blast left him unconscious, so he starts falling to his doom, and Yui has to use her magic to save him. After getting him to safety, she tries giving him some holy water to heal his wounds, but nothing seems to work. All of a sudden, blasts begin to rain down from the sky, so Yui casts a shield to protect herself. By the time the onslaught is over, Yui is left exhausted, and just then, they hear a voice coming from above them. Fried is glad he chose to set up an ambush here since it worked perfectly, but he can't believe that Hajime managed to survive a full power blast from Uranus. Hajime finally regains consciousness, and he sees Fried up in the sky, so he kind of understands what's going on here. Fried acquired God's age magic, so now he is an apostle and intends to do whatever it takes to make the wish of his god come true. He activates his god's age magic and creates a rift in space, allowing him to sneak up behind Hajime and blast him across the volcano. The girls want to help him, but they are too busy defending themselves against the dragons, so Hajime is on his own for now. He manages to use Limit Break to counter the blast, but it still knocks him back and Fried isn't giving him a chance to recover. Hajime summons his cross bits to counter the attack, and with them shielding him, he slowly begins advancing towards Fried. Just then, Fried and his dragon get knocked away by Tio in her dragon form. She then fires a blast at his dragon, and the dragon fires back at her. So now the two are locked in combat. While Fried is distracted, Hajime sneaks up behind him and strikes him across the chest before kicking Fried across the sky. He was about to follow it up with another attack, but a dragon saves him and flies him up. Hajime tries to go after him, but his body finally gives out under all the stress, so he starts falling towards the lava. But at the last second, Teo swoops in to save Hajime and carries him back to safety. Fried is amazed by the strength of Hajime's companions, and he is slightly scared since he nearly got beaten by a crippled Hajime, so he decides to switch tactics to defeat him. There is a magic device controlling the flow of magma in this volcano, so Fried uses his magic to remove it. And now, the volcano is going to erupt, taking Hajime and the entire Great Labyrinth out with it. There's not much time and there's no way all of them can make it out of here with Fried blocking the exit, so Hajime gives Teo his cross ring and asks her to escape on her own. Hajime has every intention of making it out of this alive, but right now Teo is the only one who can make it out of here, so he needs her to go deliver the still stone stored in his ring to Enkaji. Teo understands, so she flies straight up to make it out of the volcano before Fried can seal it off. Fried's dragons begin firing at her in an attempt to keep her from escaping, but Yui and Shia provide cover fire, and Hajime's cross bits keep Fried busy once Teo makes it out, so she's able to get past him. Meanwhile, back at the kingdom, Lilith was trying to have a discussion with her father, but when she finally gets his attention, he looks at her like she's some sort of criminal. And that's not the only strange thing either, because all the guards look like they just smoked something they shouldn't have. The king and the guards all completely ignore Lily and continue walking, so she knows something is wrong, but she's not sure what it is. She starts walking back to her room when she notices Shizuku in the courtyard training as usual. Shizuku is pushing herself so hard because she hates how she was too weak to do anything against the demon, so she wants to become stronger. But she's still got time to take a break when she spots a cute cat on the ground. She gets really into playing with the cat, but then she realizes that Lily has been watching her the entire time, so she gets embarrassed. After Shizuku calms down, she asks Lily if there's any news from the castle officials. Lily tells her that the officials say they need Koki to become strong enough to defeat the demons. Shizuku asks what the officials plan to do about Hajime, and according to what she heard, it sounds like they are planning to label him an enemy of the kingdom. Meanwhile, out in the forest, Hiyama is beside himself in anger because Hajime is still alive. All of a sudden, a voice from behind asks him why he's so upset that Hajime is alive, but then again it's understandable since Hajime took Kaori with him. Hiyama tells the girl to shut up because she can't blackmail him for attempting to kill Hajime if he's still alive, but attempted murder is still pretty bad, so if the others found out, they'd definitely turn on him. However, she is willing to keep it a secret if Hiyama helps with her plan, and in exchange she promises him that he will get to have Kaori all to himself. Teo eventually makes it back to Enkaji, but she is so exhausted that she collapses in front of the gate. Kaori comes running to check on her, and after treating her wounds, Kaori and Miyu take her inside to rest. When Teo finally wakes up, she tells them about the sneak attack and how Hajime, Shia, and Yui were trapped in the volcano. Kaori is really worried, but she knows Hajime will find a way to survive no matter what. Still, she would like to go help him as soon as possible, but they can't take Miyu on such a dangerous mission. So first, they are going to take her back to Arisen, and afterward, they'll go look for Hajime. Speaking of Hajime, it looks like he and the others managed to get away from the volcano after all, but he is still in critical condition, so it will take a while for him to get back on his feet. On the bright side, Yui can tell that the effects of the light poison from that dragon blast are starting to fade, so Hajime should regain his stamina soon. And even though they are in the middle of the ocean, Yui still plans to give him a special lower body workout. While she does that, Hajime thinks back to what happened in the volcano as the magma was rising. They had no way of getting out, so they found a door in the side of the volcano and went inside to avoid being burned to ash. The inner room was thankfully magma-proof, so they were safe for the moment, and as luck would have it, this room contained the ancient god's spatial magic spell, so Yui was able to analyze it immediately. However, it will take some time for her to learn how to use it properly, so she can't teleport them out of there. They still have to find a way out, so Hajime suggests that they should just swim through the lava. The others think that sounds crazy, but knowing Hajime, he probably has something planned, so they go along with it. They open the doors, and as the room is being flooded with magma, Yui puts up a barrier around them. The barrier won't last forever, so Hajime summons his latest invention. He had built a submarine in case they needed to explore some underwater labyrinths, and as luck would have it, Hajime had made this thing lava-proof too. They all get in the sub and dive down into the magma until eventually they get caught up in a current and are spat out into the ocean from a thermal vent. That explains how they made it to the ocean. But they still have no idea what part of the ocean this is. Hajime could probably figure out where they are if he had his cross ring, but he gave that to Teo. So for now, they are completely lost. All of a sudden, their ship is boarded by mermen, and they accuse Hajime of kidnapping one of their children. Hajime assumes they must be referring to Miyu, but before he can explain anything, One of the mermen attacks Shia, so he smacks the guy across the water with a fish. The other guards try to attack, but they're no match for Hajime's group, so they get knocked out. This is what happens when people get impatient. If the guards had just listened, Hajime could have told them that he actually rescued Miu. Speaking of Miu, Hajime hears her voice coming from the sky for some reason. He looks up and sees Miu falling straight toward him after jumping off Tio's back, so he jumps up to catch her. She's really happy to see him again, but once they get back to the ground, Hajime gives her a serious scolding about how dangerous it is to jump out of the sky. It turns out that this place is really close to Arisen, so they gather up the unconscious guards and start heading for the city. Once they arrive, Miu says she wants to go see her mother. As soon as Miu's mother finds out that her daughter is back, she rushes out to meet her even though she has a broken leg. When they are finally reunited, she is relieved to see that Miu is alright, but she's also confused to hear Miu calling Hajime Papa, since she doesn't remember getting remarried. Back at the palace, Shizuku happens to run into Aiko in the halls, so she and Ai sit down to have a discussion. Shizuku tells her all about what she's heard about Nagumo. Come to think of it, she recalls that Aiko had an encounter with Nagumo a while back, so she asks her for the details. Aiko thinks back to that moment and immediately insists she didn't do anything illegal because Hajime is 18, but Shizuku has no idea what she's talking about. Aiko had a meeting with the king to discuss Nagumo's situation, and unfortunately, the royal family has decided to brand Nagumo as a heretic. Aiko tried to oppose the idea since Nagumo hadn't done anything to antagonize the kingdom, but they wouldn't listen to her no matter how much she tried to convince them. And now that she thinks about it, all the council members looked like they were high and depressed at the same time. Since Miu is now safe with her mother, Hajime decides to go explore the sunken dungeon Malusia with the others. They dive into a deep-sea trench with Hajime's submarine, and they eventually locate the entrance to the dungeon, leading them to a cave. From here, they are going to have to continue on foot, so they start walking through the labyrinth and eventually come across a cave. As soon as they enter, the entrance closes behind them, and all of a sudden, they are attacked by a purple slime. Yui puts up a magic shield to protect everyone, but the slime seems to be able to melt through magic, so she can't hold it off for long. Tio figures out that she can burn the slime with her flames, but the monster keeps regenerating, so it looks like the only way to defeat it is to destroy its mana crystal. But about that, Hajime says that thing doesn't have a magic crystal. He's looking at it with his demon eye right now, and the entire thing is glowing red, so its entirely body is basically a mana crystal, and the same goes for the walls of this room, so they may already be trapped in the belly of this monster. If that's the case, then they stand no chance of beating it if they fight normally, so Hajime starts thinking of a way for them to escape. He notices some water leaking out from the ground, and that gives him an idea, so he pulls out his railgun and fires it into the ground to create a hole for everyone to get out of here. His plan works, but everyone ends up in a section of the cave that's completely flooded, and Kaori does not have the lung capacity to make it out of this alive, so Hajime leaves Yui and goes to rescue her. Eventually, Kaori wakes up on a beach with Hajime, and she asks him why he chose to save her instead of Yui. She was probably expecting him to say something about how much he cares about her, but the fact is that he trusts Yui to survive on her own, but he knew there's no way Kaori could survive this place on her own. For now, they just need to keep exploring the labyrinth until they get to the bottom, so they walk across the fields and eventually come across a shipwreck. All of a sudden, the area begins to transform, and they are pulled into an illusion of a war that took place centuries ago. People are being slaughtered left and right, so Kaori tries to save one of the men, but when she starts healing him, he fades away. They are then surrounded by soldiers on the ship, and all the soldiers look deranged, yelling that they will kill all the heretics for their god, a hit. After killing all the illusions, the area returns to normal, but Kaori is still wondering what all that was about. Hajime believes that the illusion must have been based on past events. Kaori is sickened by the thought that all this tragedy was caused by a crazed god, so Hajime takes her to a safe spot so she can rest. He understands what it feels like to lose your mind after seeing something horrific. After all, if Yui hadn't been there for him when he got stuck in the labyrinth, who knows where he would be by now. Hearing Hajime talk about Yui like this makes Kaori feel jealous, so she asks Hajime if he thinks she's an inconvenience, and yes, he tells Kaori that she's holding him back. When she first joined the group, Hajime treated her harshly, hoping that she would eventually give up and stop following him. But through all the time they spent together, he was able to see Shia laugh, cry, and get angry sometimes, but she never surrendered to her emotions or let herself fall into self-pity. Hajime tells Kaori that he's in love with Yui and nothing is ever going to change that, so if hearing him say that makes Kaori's heart ache, then she's better off not being around him. Back at the palace, Aiko is on her way to meet with her students so she can tell them what she knows, but before she could get there, she is stopped by a nun. Aiko asks her to get out of the way, but the nun tells her that she is here to take Aiko to the Divine Mountain, and she won't take no for an answer. The nun tries to hypnotize Aiko with her charm skill, but Aiko's deity status makes her immune to its effects. But unfortunately, it doesn't make her immune to hands, so the nun just punches Aiko in the gut to knock her out. The nun starts carrying Aiko away to make sure no one witnesses this, but the princess saw the whole thing, and she knows she needs to tell someone before it's too late. Hajime and Kaori continue through the shipyard and come across a giant ship in the middle of the field. They board it, and as soon as they do, another illusion begins to manifest. It looks like this illusion might not be so bad because the king at the time was holding a party to celebrate peace between humans and demi-humans. But then, a few seconds into the banquet, the king reveals that he is still every bit as racist as he was before, and the only reason he held this banquet was so he could slay the filthy animals that claimed to be equal to humans. All in the name of his god, a hit. Seeing all the carnage leaves Kaori feeling sick again, but they still need to keep moving, so they head down into the ship corridor. As they walk, a dark mist rolls in, and Kaori ends up getting separated from Hajime after a wind trap is triggered. Hajime tries to go after her, but he gets surrounded by soldiers, so he has to defeat them. Once he has taken out all the soldiers, he starts looking for Kaori, and before long, he finds her standing in a suspiciously dark corner. Hajime can immediately tell that something's wrong, so just to be safe, he shoots Kaori in the head with a magic bullet. Kaori falls to the ground in pain and asks Hajime why he did that, but Hajime just shoots her again. He's already figured out that something is possessing Kaori's body, but the ghost laughs because it thinks there's nothing he can do about it. However, Hajime just points his gun at the ghost again and prepares to shoot. The ghost starts to panic and reminds Hajime that this is still Kaori's body, so even though the magic bullets won't kill Kaori, he can't just keep shooting her. Hajime puts his gun down to think about it for a second, but then shoots the ghost again anyway. It's not like the ghost is going to release Kaori if Hajime stops shooting, and the magic bullets cause a lot of pain, so Hajime is just going to keep blasting the ghost until it leaves Kaori's body. The ghost realizes Hajime isn't bluffing and the torture of being shot over and over isn't worth it, so it immediately releases Kaori's body. After the ghost leaves, Hajime gets close to Kaori to check if she's still alive, and as soon as she wakes up, she kisses Hajime on the lips. Hajime asks her what she thinks she's doing, so she tells him she's giving him her answer to his question. She is in love with Hajime, and even though she knows he loves Yui most of all, she intends to stay by his side regardless. They eventually find a magic circle that teleports them to the final area of the labyrinth, and it looks like the others managed to make it here in one piece as well. So they head to the center and Yui begins analyzing the magic circle. Meanwhile, back at the castle, the remaining students are starting to realize that something is wrong because it has been 3 days since Aiko supposedly went to the Divine Mountain, and they haven't heard from her since. As for Aiko, she's alright, but the nun says her power is inconvenient, so until the right time comes, they're going to keep her locked up for now. After what she witnessed, the princess has been on the run because she doesn't know who she can trust. Everyone has been acting strange lately, so she's sure something is going on, but she can't do anything about it on her own. Meanwhile, in one of the training halls, all the soldiers who have been turned have been gathered in preparation for the plan, and it looks like Hiyama is in on it. At the same time, in the demon realm, Freed tells his soldiers that he has received a decree from their god, so they will be marching to eradicate all the heretics. Back in the Highlight Kingdom, Mel has realized that something called the Void has been afflicting the people in the castle, and unfortunately, it has already spread to 30% of the army, including the leaders and officers. He asks Jose to help gather everyone who knows about black magic so they can prepare countermeasures against the Void, and in the meantime, he heads back to his office to prepare some letters. He wants to send these letters to Duke's Engine and Kaji and Hajime in case something happens to him here, but suddenly, there's a knock at his door. He's already on edge, so he draws his sword and is ready for a fight, but then he realizes it's Hiyama, and he still trusts him, so he puts his sword away and lets him in. He asks Hiyama if there's anything he wanted to talk about, but Hiyama just keeps tapping his foot on the ground without saying a word. Suddenly, there's another knock at the door, and this time it turns out to be Jose. The second Meld opens the door. Jose instantly tries to stab him in the face. From the look in Jose's eyes, Mel can tell that he must have been afflicted with the Void, so he is prepared to fight him off. But while his back is turned, Hiyama stabs him. But Meld isn't the Knight Captain for nothing, so before Hiyama can cause any fatal damage, he casts a wind spell that blows everyone away. The soldiers get back up and try to attack him while Hiyama prepares to cast a spell, but Meld is way too experienced to let that happen. So he slams Hiyama into a wall to stop him from casting a spell, and while he is down, Meld knocks out 2 of the other guards. The last one is Jose, and as the vice captain, Jose is a little tougher, but he is still no match for Meld, so he gets clotheslined into the corner of the desk. Normally, Jose should be tasting colors after that concussion, but he just gets right back on his feet because no amount of damage can stop the Void-afflicted soldiers. Mouth still has no idea how any of this happened or why Hajime betrayed him, but more void-afflicted guards start showing up, so he has no plans to stick around. He jumps straight out the window, and after landing on the ground, he's about to fire a blast into his office to slow Hajime and the soldiers down. But then he realizes that he's not alone out here, and before he knows what hit him, he is killed by a magic blast. The next morning, Hajime and his group are driving through a field when they come across a caravan that is under attack by some bandits. The caravan guards are greatly outnumbered, so Kaori asks Hajime to help save them. But before she's even done speaking, Hajime is already driving full speed at the bandits. Kaori thanks him for agreeing to save the caravan, but really, he was just looking for an excuse to use his minigun on someone. As soon as Hajime begins firing, the bandits begin dropping like flies, and he doesn't intend to leave a single one of them alive. But there are a couple of innocent people who got hurt by the bandits, so he sends Kaori out to heal him. And while she's busy healing, a girl runs up to Kaori and reveals that she is Princess Lily. She had fled the castle in hopes of finding someone to help after what she witnessed in the castle, and as luck would have it, she happened to run into Hajime and the others. She explains how all the people in the castle started acting strangely. Even her father is now feverishly advocating for the church, and at first she thought he was just trying to improve the kingdom's relationship with the church, but this goes far beyond anything like that. She also tells Hajime about Aiko being kidnapped by a nun of the Divine Mountain, and Hajime figures it must have something to do with Aiko's connection to him, so he has to help break her out of prison. And it turned out to be a lot easier than you'd expect, because he literally just airwalks up to Aiko's cell and uses transmutation to tear a hole in the wall. Just then, by pure chance, the demon army begins their invasion of the kingdom, and even though he wasn't expecting this, Hajime thinks he can use the chaos to sneak out undetected. However, all of a sudden, an attack is launched straight at him, completely disintegrating the prison. Hajime manages to get out of the way with Aiko before the blast lands, but now he has to deal with Noint, one of the apostles of Ehit. Noint charges at Hajime, so he tries firing some bullets at her, but she blocks all of them and nearly stabs him in the chest. Fortunately, he's able to dodge and create some space with his cross arsenal, but since he still has to protect Aiko, Hajime is practically handicapped against Noint, so all he can do is dodge and defend against her attacks. Noint is impressed that Hajime is capable of keeping up with her even though he is stuck carrying extra weight, so she admits that he is indeed quite strong. But she says he is still unfit to become one of Ehit's pawns. Hajime takes that as a compliment and tells Noint that he wouldn't want to become the pawn of a shut-in brat like Ehit anyway. But on another note, he asks Noint if she really has the time to be fighting him right now. I mean, the kingdom is currently being attacked by the demons, and if she doesn't do something soon, it will be completely destroyed. But Noint has no intention of helping the kingdom, so if it's going to die, then it's going to die because that's what Ehit wishes for. Hajime now realizes that Ehit sees all people as nothing more than pawns to be killed for entertainment, and at this point, he wouldn't be surprised if Ehit is also being worshipped by the demons and orchestrated this whole war just for fun. Apparently, that's exactly what's going on. So Noint asks Hajime what he plans to do about it, but Hajime honestly doesn't care. In fact, he would be happy to get out of Ehit's way entirely if they just agreed to send him back to his original world. However, Noint tells him that's not going to happen because Ehit has more hate for Hajime than Spider-Man's writers. Hajime overcame every obstacle in his way and gained amazing strength for himself, and Ehit doesn't like that, so he wants to see Hajime die a pitiful and painful death. That's a lot to take in, but Hajime now knows that there's no point in trying to reason with Noint. Just then, Teo shows up and blows Noint out of the sky with her dragon's breath, and Hajime has never been so happy to see her. He hops onto her back, asks Teo to get Aiko to safety, so he can fight Noint at full strength. So Teo flies off and Hajime turns back to face Noint. Noint uses her magic to launch a fireball at him, so Hajime jumps out of the way and starts firing his machine gun at her. Noint is too quick for Hajime to hit her with his machine gun, so he tries blasting her with his cannon point blank. But Noint vanishes and appears behind him, forcing Hajime to block with his cannon as she slashes at him. He doesn't have many options here because everything he has tried so far has failed to even scratch her. Noint charges at him again, so he tries grabbing her swords, but she's too strong. He jumps back to create some space, and in the process, Hajime gets cut. However, he notices that Noint's swords are starting to take some damage, and that gives him an idea. He summons several crosses and has them fire full power blasts at Noint. She manages to come out of it completely unharmed, but Hajime never intended to hit her with that attack. He pulls out 2 rings and throws them at Noint, but she easily knocks them away. Noint believes Hajime is finally running out of options if he tried using such a desperate attack, but then he takes out his guns and aims at 2 rings beside him. The rings are connected with spatial magic, so when he fires his bullets, the shots come out right next to Noint, forcing her to block with her swords, As a result, both her swords are shattered, allowing Hajime to tie her up with a magic rope. Now she has nowhere to run, so he loads up his railgun and penetrates her with a 12-inch thick rod. There's no recovering from a wound like that, so Note dies and falls out of the sky. And now that his fight is over, Hajime goes to check on Teo and Aiko, and it looks like they blew up the entire church. Teo was initially going to just burn it down, but Aiko wanted to help, so she used some magic and ended up creating a bunch of methane. The methane was way more powerful than she expected it to be. Teo personally thinks Aiko is really impressive because she never could have destroyed the entire church on her own, not to mention all the people inside the church who most certainly died in there. As soon as Teo says this, it dawns on Aiko that she really just killed people, and she breaks down in regret. Hajime knows how she must feel, so he comforts her and says everything is going to be fine. Just then, a figure appears from the ruins of the church, and it doesn't look like a survivor, so Hajime gets curious. He asks the man who he is, but the man remains silent and points toward a magic circle on the ground. A circle looks like the same kind from the Great Labyrinth, so the three step onto it and are teleported to a separate room. As they walk in, they step into another magic circle. The spell in the circle is one that allows you to manipulate the soul. It could even be used to transfer a soul from one vessel to another, and if something like this exists, Aiko believes there must be a spell out there that can send them back to Japan. But that aside, they need to hurry back to the capital because it's still under attack from the demons, and they don't know if Hajime's classmates are alright. Earlier that day, after hearing all the commotion outside, Shizuku and a bunch of the other girls got worried, so they went to get Koki so that they could figure out what's going on. Just then, one of those voided soldiers comes over to the group and informs them that the demon army is attacking the capital, so they need to come to the stadium immediately and prepare for battle. They agree, but as they are walking to the stadium, Shizuku realizes something is off, so she tells everyone to stay on guard. However, they are suddenly blinded by a flash of light, and while everyone is blinded, the guards turn on them and stab everyone in the back. Shizuku is the only one left standing, but she doesn't know why this is happening or what she should do. Just then, her personal maid runs up to her, pretending to be injured, but as soon as she gets close, she stabs her in the back as well and slams her face to the ground. Eri then begins to laugh because everything turned out exactly how she wanted it. Eri walks over to Koki and she is so happy that she finally has him all to herself, so she kisses him for an uncomfortably long time. Shizuku asks her why she is doing all this, so Eri explains that she has been in love with Koki for a long time, but rather than confessing her love to him like a normal person, she decided it would be much more effective to kill everyone close to Koki and kidnap him so he can never leave her. Shizuku asks her if she's also the reason everyone in the castle has been acting so strange lately, so Eri explains that everyone has actually been dead for a while now. She used her necromancy skill to reanimate their bodies and restore some of their memories so they could act like normal people, aside from the fact that they always look high. Eri has always hated her classmates for getting in the way of her one-sided relationship with Koki, but she especially hates Shizuku, so she's going to take great joy in watching her die. However, just before Eri could have Shizuku stabbed, a barrier is cast over her and Eri is blown away. But one responsible is Kaori, and she immediately starts casting a healing spell so all her classmates can recover from their injuries. However, just before she could finish the spell, Kaori gets stabbed in the back by Hiyama. Hiyama is ecstatic that he finally managed to kill Kaori, because now Eri can turn her into his personal slave. But Kaori doesn't give up that easily, so even though she has a sword sticking out of her chest, she finishes casting this spell and begins healing all her classmates. The healing spell starts working on her too, so it looks like Kaori might survive after all, but then Hiyama pushes the sword back in, and the light finally fades from Kaori's eyes. Seeing this enrages Koki to such an extent that he breaks free from his shackles and swears that he will never forgive Eri for what she has done. He raises his sword and launches a heavenly slash, tearing through Eri's army of undead soldiers to get to her. But eventually, Koki falls to the ground and starts spitting up blood. It turns out that when Eri kissed him earlier, she actually gave him a poison that would leave him immobile, so now no one can stop her. Eri is about to use her magic to turn Kaori into a puppet, but at the last second, Hajime shows up. He doesn't know exactly what's going on, but he can tell that Kaori is injured and Hiyama and Eri are the ones behind it, so he flash steps behind Hiyama and punches him into a wall. Teo and Aiko soon arrive, so Hajime asks them to take care of Kaori for him. Kaori is already dead, so healing magic won't do much good, but they should be able to at least bind Kaori's soul to her body to keep her from dying completely. Meanwhile, after seeing what Hajime did to Hiyama, Eri realizes she is next, so she tries bargaining with him. She promises to resurrect Kaori if Hajime lets her go, But even if she does resurrect Kaori, Kaori will be stuck as a puppet forever, so Hajime isn't interested. He's about to shoot Eri in the head, but all of a sudden, Hiyama attacks him from behind. Hajime easily catches him and holds him up by the neck while Hiyama whines about how it's not fair that Kaori likes Hajime instead of him. It's honestly sad to listen to, so he tosses Hiyama out of the stadium, and unfortunately for him, he lands right in the middle of a swarm of hungry demons. And he's got zero plot armor, so Hiyama is definitely dead. Hajime then turns back to Eri to finish her off, but out of nowhere, Freed teleports in, and he wants revenge for the humiliation he faced at Hajime's hands. He says his demons have already surrounded the stadium, so there's nothing Hajime can do to stop them from destroying the kingdom and killing his friends. Hajime doesn't really care about what happens to the kingdom, but Freed is really pissing him off, so he pulls an item out of his inventory and uses it to summon his death laser. In the span of a few seconds, every demon in the area is disintegrated, so Freed now has no chance of winning, so he is forced to retreat. But before he leaves, he takes Eri with him because she is a valuable asset. Yuri and Shia show up shortly after Freed leaves, so Nagumo asks them to help maintain Kaori's soul. Shizuku is still devastated over Kaori's death, but Nagumo tells her to have faith in him and his team because no matter what, he won't let her die. The next morning, reconstruction efforts have begun within the kingdom, and Lily is now the new ruling monarch. According to the damage report, the attack on the kingdom was also the work of Eri because she got in contact with the demons and gave them information that allowed them to invade the capital. She did all of this just so she could live out her fantasy with Koki. However, the brainwashing and murder of the king were the work of the nun from the Divine Mountain, but she has since gone missing, and they can't seem to track her down. As for the heroes, they are all currently training in this stadium, but Shizuku keeps looking up at the sky because she is waiting for Nagumo to return. He promised that he would bring Kaori back to life, but Koki still doesn't trust him, so he doubts Nagumo will return. However, a few moments later, Nagumo and his friends drop from the sky and crash land in the middle of the stadium. Shizuku is overjoyed to see Nagumo, so she runs up to him and asks if he managed to save Kaori. Nagumo tells her that Kaori is fine, but she's a little different now. He wants Shizuku to promise that she won't get mad at him. Shizuku doesn't understand what he means, but then Kaori crashes down into the stadium as well, and for some reason, she looks like Noid. Nagumo explains that he used God Age soul magic to protect Kaori's soul, so once her condition stabilized, they took her soul and placed it in Noin's body. Shizuku kind of understands, but she asks why they chose to put Kaori's soul in Noin's body. Nagumo explains that he could have put Kaori back in her original body, but she asked him to put her in Noin's body instead because she would be stronger that way. Shizuku is incredibly grateful that Nagumo saved her best friend, so she swears that if he ever needs something from her, she will be sure to repay the favor. Nagumo tells her she doesn't have to worry about repaying him because all he did was save the life of his friend. But that aside, he has something he needs to tell them. Hajime explains that Egan has been using everyone as mere pawns for his own amusement, and Koki is infuriated to learn that all they've been working for has been a lie. He asks Hajime why he didn't tell them about this sooner, but even if he had told them, there's no way they would have believed him. Later, everyone is having dinner, so Shizuku asks Hajime where he plans to go now. He tells her he is going to the Great Labyrinth, and the path he is going to take happens to cut through the Empire, so Lily asks him if she can come along. As the new ruler of the kingdom, there are a lot of things she needs to discuss with the Emperor, so she would like to meet with him as soon as possible. Hajime is fine with Lily tagging along, but since she's going, Koki says he and the rest of the class will go as well because he wants to become stronger with God Age magic so he can save the world, since Hajime clearly doesn't care about doing that. All of his classmates feel the same way since they want to be strong enough to protect themselves and their friends, so Hajime agrees to bring them along. But he didn't agree because he's a nice guy, he just thought he could use them as good meat shields once they got to the Great Labyrinth. The group is now headed to the Haltsina Sea of Trees, but before that, they need to drop Lily off at the Empire's border so she can meet the Emperor. And honestly, she's not looking forward to it, because the Empire is really oppressive. It is comprised of strong adventurers and mercenaries, and they use their strength to take whatever they want from the weak. The Empire also heavily looks down on beast people like Shia and often enslaves them simply for the thrill of it. Before Shia met Hajime and Yui, her entire village was destroyed and a lot of her friends and family were killed right before her eyes, while the rest were enslaved by the Imperial soldiers. Shia managed to escape the massacre, but she has been blaming herself for the incident ever since because she couldn't do anything to save them back then. After hearing Shia's story, Koki refuses to stand by while such injustice is occurring. He tells Hajime that conquering the Great Labyrinth will have to wait because he wants to go save Shia's family from the Empire. However, Hajime tells him he's not getting involved. Slavery isn't illegal in this world, and he isn't interested in potentially starting a war with the Empire. A little while later, Hajime's scanner spots an Imperial carriage, and it's the same kind that is used to transport slaves, so Koki asks Hajime to land the ship so they can rescue them. However, Hajime tells him to wait because he spots two bunny girls running away from the carriage, and he and Shia recognize those two, Lana and Mina, from the Halia tribe. Koki accuses Hajime of abandoning the bunny girls since he doesn't want to go down to help, but Hajime asserts that those two are perfectly capable of handling themselves, and the fact that they are running away like damsels in distress must mean they are leading the Imperial soldiers into a trap. A few moments later, Hajime is proven right as the Imperial soldiers are ambushed and slaughtered by the group of bunny people. However, one of the soldiers managed to survive and was about to blast one of the bunny people with a spell. But before that could happen, Hajime fires a bullet from the sky that vaporizes the soldier. Mina and Lana recognize Hajime's attack, so they all look to the sky and salute him because it has been a long time since they've seen their boss. Hajime invites all the bunny people onto his ship, and once they are all aboard, he asks why they were all out here in the first place. Par explains that they were attacked by the Empire again, but this time their goal wasn't to invade their land, it was to kidnap as many bunny people as possible. They were able to fight off the first wave of Imperial soldiers and managed to capture a few soldiers, but they also suffered a few losses on their end. By interrogating the captured soldiers, they figured out what's going on, and apparently the Empire was attacked by monsters led by the demons, and as a result the capital was badly damaged, so they are trying to replenish their labor force. And by that, they mean the Empire wants to enslave more beast people and work them to death to rebuild their city. Obviously, they had no intention of letting their brethren be turned into slaves, so the chief of their tribe set up a task force to go rescue them. However, not long after the task force arrived in the capital, they disappeared. That's why Lana and the others are out here looking for clues as to what could have happened to the chief and the task force. Hajime knows Shia must be worried about her father and the rest of her people, so as much as he wanted to avoid getting involved in the Empire's business, he can't ignore it anymore. The group soon arrives in the Empire, and all the rumors about it being attacked by demons are true. Just then, Koki spots an enslaved beastman child being forced to work on the reconstruction. And when the child falls over, one of the Imperial soldiers walks over with a stick to beat him. Koki refuses to stand by and let that happen, so he is about to confront the soldier. However, before he could do anything, Hajime flicks a rock at the soldier and knocks the stick out of his hand. Hajime really doesn't care if Koki gets himself into trouble with his heroic inclinations, but he doesn't want to get dragged down with him, so he tells him to tone it down. Koki asks Hajime if he is really going to ignore the suffering of that child even though he cares so much about Shia, and the answer is yes. Shia is precious to him, but Hajime has never met that boy before, so he has no reason to go out of his way to help him, and certainly not when they have a mission to accomplish. He reminds Koki that they are here to gather intel on Shia's family, so that takes priority over saving the other enslaved beastman right now. The group then proceeds to ask around the capital for any information regarding Shia's father and the task force, and from what they can gather, Cam and the others must have gone on a rampage through the city to rescue the enslaved beastmen, but at some point they were subdued and arrested by the Imperial army. Hajime intends to take Shia and Yui to break the task force out of prison, but Koki asks Hajime if it's possible to resolve this peacefully. Lily is here meeting with the Emperor, and Koki is known all across the continent as the Summon Hero, so he's convinced that they can just request that Cam and the task force be released from prison. However, Hajime points out that there are many flaws with that plan. For one, Cam and the task force invaded the capital and killed several soldiers on their way in, so there's no way the Empire would just agree to let them go. And additionally, if they were to make a request like that, it could affect Lily's diplomatic mission and put her at a disadvantage. Koki realizes how dumb his idea was because the last thing he'd want to do is cause trouble for Lily, but Hajime tells him there's still a way for him to make himself useful. He's going to need someone to create a distraction while he breaks into the prison to free all the bunny people. And it is very important that they all wear these Power Ranger masks to keep their identities secret. Hajime had a lot of other ways to disguise them, but he thought this would be funny since none of his classmates think Power Rangers are cool. That night, Koki and the others launch an attack on the Imperial prison with their masks on to hide their identity. Too bad they forgot that everyone on the continent knows what their outfits and weapons look like too. While Koki and the others are distracting the guards, Hajime, Shia, and Yui sneak into the dungeon to break the bunny people out. But he's a little surprised when he sees that aside from a few bruises, they are mostly fine. He was sure the Empire would have done far worse to all of them, but it looked like they were just being interrogated, although Cam got the worst of it since he's the Halia Bunny Tribe's chief. After releasing him as well, Hajime transports all the rabbit people back to the surface, a few miles away from the capital, and Shia is really glad to see them again. Now everyone is safe, however. Cam says he has something he wants to discuss. He tells Hajime that he is planning to go to war with the Empire, but as soon as Shia hears that, she points her hammer at her father and says there's no way she won't allow it because it's practically a death sentence. Hajime grabs Shia's tail and tells her to at least hear Cam out before threatening to put him in a coma. Once Shia has calmed down, Cam explains that the Emperor seems to have taken an interest in the rabbit people recently. Normally, rabbit people are incredibly weak, but thanks to Hajime's training, the people of the Halia tribe were able to become strong, and that caught the Emperor's attention. He now wants to enslave all rabbit people and make them his pets, so it is likely that he will attack more rabbit villages soon. The Halia are strong enough to defend themselves, but the other rabbit tribes won't be able to put up a fight if the Imperial army attacks. Cam doesn't want to let his brethren suffer at the hands of the Emperor, which is why he plans to declare war on the Empire and fight for his people. Hajime understands where Cam is coming from, but he tells Cam that he and his people stand no chance in a direct confrontation against the Empire, which is why he's going to help them come up with the perfect strategy to ensure their victory. The next morning, Princess Lily meets with the Emperor and he seems pleased to see her. Unfortunately, she comes bearing bad news as she informs the Emperor that the kingdom's former king, as well as the bishop, have died as a result of demon attacks. The kingdom is in dire straits right now, so she asks the Emperor for some support. The Emperor is more than happy to assist since they are united in the fight against the demons. However, he reminds her that she has a role to play in strengthening the bond between the kingdom and the Empire. Lily already knew this would happen, but it doesn't make it any better because the Emperor's son, Baius, is an absolute jerk. In unrelated news, the Emperor says that his prison was attacked by some people wearing weird masks. Lily feigns ignorance and suggests it might have been the demons, and while the Emperor has no proof otherwise, he does point out that the attackers were wearing clothes identical to those of the otherworldly heroes, and one of them was even holding a holy sword. Lily pretends to be baffled, but internally she's cursing Koki for making such a mess for her. And as if things couldn't get any worse, a messenger soon arrives saying Nagumo and the heroes have just arrived at the castle looking for Lily. Meanwhile, outside the castle, Nagumo and the others are greeted by General Halt, and he tells them they will be allowed to enter soon. But then Shia gets a good look at him and turns out to be the same soldier who led the initial attack on Shia's people. As soon as Shia realizes who he is, she is enraged, but she holds herself back to avoid causing unnecessary trouble for Hajime. Once Hajime and the others enter the castle, Lily demands to know what's going on and why he suddenly showed up out of nowhere, but Hajime just tells her she'll see the results later tonight. A little while later, everyone is called into a meeting with the Emperor, and the Emperor seems pretty excited to meet Hajime because he has heard a lot about him. He asks if it's true that Hajime conquered a labyrinth alone and is now capable of making incredibly powerful artifacts. Hajime confirms this, so the Emperor asks him if he's willing to share his technology with the Empire or Kingdom. However, Hajime has no intention of doing that. The Emperor asks what gives him the right to monopolize such technology, but Hajime thinks that's a stupid question because it's his technology, and it's not like the Emperor could force him to relinquish it. The Emperor has had the entire room surrounded by guards for a while now, but he tells them to stand down. If Hajime wanted, he could have easily killed every soldier in the area and wiped the blood off the floor with the Emperor's face. And the Emperor knows that, which is why he would rather not get into a direct confrontation with Hajime. Besides, he has other matters to attend to, so he informs everyone that he is holding an engagement party for Lily tonight, and they are welcome to attend. As soon as the Emperor leaves, everyone starts asking Lily if she's really getting engaged because she never told them anything about this. Lily explains that the kingdom has been destabilized by the demon attack, so as the new ruler, her top priority is to strengthen the kingdom's ties to the Empire. And as much as she doesn't like the idea, getting married is the best way to do that. Koki suddenly gets up and tells her she can't go through with it because she shouldn't be marrying someone she doesn't love. But Hajime tells him this is Lily's decision to make, and as a mere student turned hero, Koki understands nothing of royal politics. After hearing this, Koki falls silent because he realizes that Hajime is right, but he still can't accept it. However, the others tell him that if the engagement party is tonight, then they probably don't have to worry about it since the Empire is going to be very busy dealing with something else. Lily gets the feeling that everyone here is plotting something, but she has no idea what it is because no one will tell her. A few hours later, Lily is getting dressed for her engagement party when Baius walks in. She tries to be polite since Baius is going to become her husband, but Baius doesn't have a polite bone in his body, so he immediately grabs Lily's chest. He tells her he has always loved getting rebellious slaves and torturing them until they are forced to obey him, and he is going to enjoy doing the same to Lily. He pushes her to the ground and rips her dress open. But before things go too far, a metal spider is lowered from the ceiling and clamps down on Bayas's neck, knocking him out instantly. Lily is confused at first, but then she spots the spider, so she realizes this must be Hajime's doing, and she is very grateful that he saved her. Elsewhere in the castle, Hajime and his group are getting ready for the special event they have planned for tonight, and at the same time, several Halia rabbits surround the castle. The Halia rabbits systematically eliminate every Imperial soldier guarding the castle and begin their invasion while Hajime and the others attend the banquet. Despite what happened earlier, Lily still decided to show up and act like nothing is wrong. Although she switches to a black dress to passive-aggressively tell everyone that she's not happy about this. At one point, she asks Hajime to dance with her, and since he can't just turn her down in public, Hajime agrees. While they are dancing, Lily thanks Hajime for saving her earlier, but he reminds her that he didn't kill the prince, so if she gets married to him, it's only a matter of time before it happens again. Lily understands that, but right now she just wants to enjoy her dance with Hajime. Hajime tells her she shouldn't be hugging him so tightly, especially not in public because she's about to be a married woman, but Lily doesn't care and hugs Hajime even tighter. She asks Hajime what he would do if she asked him to save her from this situation, and Hajime tells her he would help without question because his friends care about Lily, and they wouldn't want to see her suffer at the hands of Bayas. With that said, Hajime doesn't think it's necessary to save her because after tonight, the Empire may very well cease to exist. A little while later, Cam reports that everything is ready for the attack, so the lights go out and the Halia begin firing arrows at the Emperor. However, the Emperor's skills are no jokes, so even in the dark, he is able to deflect the arrows. However, the soldiers around him are nowhere near as capable, so they are instantly wiped out. Meanwhile, Halt is leading a group of soldiers to the banquet hall to assist the king, but they are cut off by Shia. Her job is to stop any reinforcements, and she considers herself very lucky because she finally has a chance to get revenge for what he did to her people. Halt doesn't think there's any way a lowly beastman like Shia could possibly defeat them, so he tells his men to just ignore her for now since their priority is to assist the Emperor. But as soon as one of them tries walking past Shia, she punches him into a wall and makes it clear that no one is making it past her alive. The Emperor would normally be able to defeat Cam, but during their clash, Cam was able to poison the Emperor with a paralytic drug, so the fight is pretty much over. The Emperor can no longer move effectively, so he gets shot by several arrows, but Cam has no intention of finishing him off. At least not yet. He even gives the Emperor an antidote to make sure he survives and offers to spare him if he agrees to Cam's demands. First, he wants the Emperor to release all the Beastman slaves he has captured, and then he wants the Emperor to abolish all slavery within the Empire. He then places a vow necklace on the Emperor, and if the Emperor agrees to Cam's terms while wearing it, he will be forced to honor his word. The Emperor initially refuses and says he'd rather die than compromise on his beliefs, so Cam is forced to do a little persuading. He orders his men to bring Bayas out and he is executed right in front of the Emperor. However, the Emperor never really liked Bayas in the first place, so he remains unfazed. And seeing this, Cam decides to switch to more drastic measures and instruct one of his men to set off the bomb. A loud boo is heard and the Emperor is visibly shaken, so he demands to know what just happened. Cam explains that a barrack was blown up, so around 300 just died. And just to make sure the message is clear, Cam orders another bombing, so another few hundred Imperial soldiers have just died. Cam tells the Emperor that so far, only soldiers have been killed. But if he continues being stubborn, then the children's hospital is next. The Emperor values the lives of his people much more than any prejudicial values he may hold, so he begs Cam to stop and agrees to his demands. The Emperor is a man who has always believed that only the strong deserve respect, and today the Halia have proved their strength and the consequences of attacking them, so they won't have to worry about being targeted again. By the next morning, all the slaves of the Empire have been released and are loaded on Hajime's ship so he can take them back to Beastman tribe. And he's bringing the Emperor as well for peace negotiation reasons. And now that the Rabbit Beastman's issue has been resolved, it's time for them to tackle the Great Labyrinth. However, Hajime can't have Lily tag along for this, so he chucks her through a portal and sends her back to the kingdom. Upon arriving at the Great Labyrinth, they walk through the entrance and use all the proofs they gathered so far to activate it. They are then teleported into a forest area, and Koki offers to lead the way for the group, but Hajime senses that something is off, so without warning, he uses one of his artifacts to restrain Yui, Tio, and Ryutaro. Everyone else asks him what he thinks he is doing, but Hajime tells them that these three are imposters. He then points a gun at Yui and blows her head off, revealing that it really was a mimic, and the same goes for the other two as well. The others are shocked, but they ask him how he knew about the mimics, since they seem pretty convincing. Hajime doesn't really know how to explain it, but Yui is the most important person to him in the world, and when they entered the forest, he could immediately tell that the person next to him was not Yui. And the Teo and Ryutaro clones gave off the same vibe, so he acted on his hunch and he was right. However, he has no idea what happened to the real ones. The group continues through the forest until a random goblin pops out of the bushes. Naturally, Kokai rushes ahead to slay it, but before he could, Hajime kicks him away. He then walks up to the goblin and tells everyone that this is Yui. He has no idea how this happened to her, but it looks like she was transformed as soon as she was teleported into this place and she can't use magic anymore. Hajime hands her a communicator so she can talk to everyone, and as soon as they hear Yui's voice, they realize Hajime was right. But that aside, they ask him how he could possibly have known that this is Yui since she looks and sounds exactly like a goblin. But Hajime says he would recognize Yui's lovely eyes anywhere, no matter what form she may take. A little while later, Hajime and the others come across a group of goblins beating up another goblin, but the goblin seems to be enjoying it for some reason, and everyone can immediately tell that it must be Teo. They also later find Ryutaro, in the form of an ogre, so now that the team is back together, they can now focus on clearing this floor. While the others are busy fighting, Teo tells Hajime that she has figured out what the theme of this labyrinth is. They must be trying to test the bond between teammates, and the first test was to see whether they'd be able to recognize their friends who had been replaced by clones and accept them despite being turned into monsters. The group eventually manages to clear the floor and find a hollow tree that should teleport them to the next floor, so they all head inside. Hajime opens his eyes and discovers that he was trapped in a case of amber alongside his friends. While he was trapped, he was shown a perfect world where he and everyone he cares about managed to make it back to Japan together, but through the strength of his will, he was able to reject it and return to reality. So now, he just needs to wait for the others to do the same. Eventually, most of them break free of the fake reality, but Koki, Ryutaro, and Suzu seem to be stuck, so after a quick lunch break, Kaori uses some restoration magic to speed up the process and get them out of there. Once Koki is released, he experiences severe depression because he really believed that the simulation of his ideal world was real, but there's no time for him to process the fact that he was living a lie in there because they need to keep moving. They make their way into a forest area when all of a sudden, slime starts dripping from the sky. The slime itself doesn't do much damage aside from getting everyone's clothes wet, but after Hajime burns it all away, he realizes that everyone's acting a little strange. Yui is being way more affectionate than usual, and the same goes for the others because they all start crawling over Hajime. Hajime realizes that the slime must have been some sort of aphrodisiac, meaning everyone who got covered in it is going to be affected. He looks over to see if the others are alright, but Koki clearly isn't in his right mind, and Ryutaro and Suzu look like they are about to go all the way soon. Hajime decides to restrain them so no one does anything that they'll regret later, but surprisingly, Teo seems perfectly fine. Hajime asks how she avoided the aphrodisiac's effects because he clearly remembers her taking some slime to the face, so Teo explains that the aphrodisiac works on her, but its effects are nothing compared to what she feels whenever Hajime hits her. Technically, that's a good thing, but it makes Hajime very uncomfortable, so he tells Teo to stay away from him for a while. Once everyone has calmed down and dealt with the embarrassment of the situation, they continue moving, but Shia hears a strange sound coming from below. She looks over the edge of one of the branches to see what it is, and she is horrified by what she witnesses. Hajime notices her reaction, so he goes over to check it out for himself, and even he starts to panic because of it. The others ask him what it is since they know there aren't many things that can spook Hajime, so he pulls up a screen and displays the millions of roaches crawling beneath them as they speak. Everyone starts freaking out, and to make matters worse, the roaches start flying at them in a huge swarm. Everyone frantically tries to swat them away, but there's no way they can kill that many with regular attacks, so Suzu puts up a shield to keep the roaches out, and then promptly passes out from the trauma of having roaches crawl all over her body. Eventually, the roaches begin to fly away and form a huge swarm in the air above the group. The roaches then create a magic circle that summons 3 giant roaches, but it also generates a blinding flash of light aimed at Hajime and the others. Hajime has no idea what that light was supposed to do, so he turns to Yui to ask what she thinks about it, but as soon as he looks at her, he says he hates Yui with every fiber of her being, and Yui says the same to him. They both threaten to kill each other, and Shia threatens to kill everyone here for being annoying, which is strange since they all clearly remember being friends a minute ago. They all soon realize that the spell they got hit with must have inverted their emotions somehow, so all their love for each other has been turned into unfiltered hatred, and because Hajime and Yui loved each other more than anything, the hate they hold for each other now is immense. Everyone's emotions have been flipped, but they still have their memories intact, so they know they need to destroy these roaches to clear the challenge. The rest of them focus on defense while Hajime and Yui work on figuring out a way to get rid of the roaches. It doesn't matter how many of them you destroy because they'll always regenerate from the giant roach swarm. And now the roaches can shoot acid from their mouths, so they need to be extra careful. Yui says she has a spell in mind that can take out all the roaches, but it's going to take some time for her to get it ready, so she's going to need Hajime to protect her until she's ready. Hajime does his best to keep the roaches at bay so they don't interrupt Yui's spell, and as time goes on, the emotion reversal spell begins wearing off, so they no longer hate each other, but that doesn't solve their roach problem. They need to destroy the magic core somehow to stop all the roaches, but Hajime has no way of finding it in that swarm, so he is just going to have to put up a shield and rely on Yui's spell. Once the spell is finally ready, Yui unleashes a wave of magic that engulfs everything in the area, but thanks to the nature of Yui's spell, she is able to limit it so it only harms targets of her choosing. As a result, the roach core is destroyed, and with the challenge completed, a doorway opens to lead them to the next area. Once everyone goes through, they find themselves in an open field with a single tree in the middle. Suddenly, the tree begins to warp, and the group is greeted by the creator of this labyrinth, Lutulus. She assumes they must already know of the battle between the liberators and the gods, so she's going to get straight to the point. She informs everyone that by passing this labyrinth's test, they have been granted evolution magic. As the name implies, it is a type of magic that can raise things to the next level, and if it is used on all the ancient magics combined, it can create the most powerful type of magic there is, concept magic. It is a type of magic that can implement any concept into this world, essential to rewriting the world's laws. However, it is not easy to use because concept magic isn't created by any logical process, but rather through sheer willpower. It is so difficult that even the 7 liberators were only able to make use of concept magic 3 times throughout their entire lives. And one such use of concept magic created this compass, which Lutulus is now giving to the group. It is a compass that always points in the direction of what you're looking for, whether it's Waldo, an object, or even another world. Just to make sure, Hajime asks Yui if she could use the evolution magic to raise her spatial magic to the point it can travel between worlds, but unfortunately, even with her skills, she says a task like that would be impossible for her. He tells her not to worry about it since he already knew it was a big ask, and besides, they still need one more ancient magic before they'd be able to use concept magic, so it will have to wait until they've conquered the final labyrinth. On that note, Suzu has a favorite ask Nagumo. She says she wants him to take her along when he goes to conquer the final labyrinth. Hajime asks her why she wanted to take the risk, since even if she doesn't come along, once Hajime acquires concept magic, he can just take them all back to Japan. And Suzu is grateful for that, but she also knows that Hajime won't help her save Eri. Nagumo would probably shoot Eri on the spot if he ever saw her face again, which is why Suzu knows she has to handle this on her own, and to do that, she's going to need to get stronger. Koki joins in, saying he wants to get stronger as well, and since the whole reason Eri betrayed all of them was because she was trying to get to him, he wants to at least talk to her one last time. Ryutaro also wants to come along, but not to save Eri. He just wants to join so he can beat her up for the things she did to them. Nagumo can tell that Suzu is serious about this, so even if he personally doesn't agree with it, he says he will let Suzu try to save Eri. But to be honest, Eri does not deserve to be saved. Right now, she's literally developing an army of undead beast soldiers for the demon army, and the things she did to make this happen are so horrific that even Freed thinks this is messed up. Thanks to the compass, Nagumo is able to locate the final labyrinth very quickly, but it's located on a freezing mountain, so he gives everyone these magic pins to help them stay warm. Shaya is excited to try it out, so she face plants right into the snow, and the pin really does keep her warm, but unfortunately, that warmth causes her to melt right through the snow and into the labyrinth below, so the others jump in after her. Down in the labyrinth, Shia hears something coming around the corner, so everyone looks in that direction and spots a white bunny. Everyone thinks the bunny is adorable, but Nagumo has seen what these guys did to Subaru, so he's not taking many chances. He begins ripping the rabbits apart with no remorse, and Shia is especially traumatized by Nagumo's ruthlessness. Once that's done, they continue down the path and eventually arrive at an ice cave, but as soon as they enter, they are attacked by ice monsters. Hajime blasts a few of the ice monsters, but every time they are destroyed, they just regenerate themselves. This isn't the first time he has dealt with something like this, so Hajime looks around and spots a magic core hidden in the ceiling. He tries to destroy it to stop the birds from regenerating, but the core dodges his blast. He now realizes that this entire room is part of a monster and every piece of ice in here could be used to attack, so everyone needs to be careful. The magic core then transforms into a giant tortoise, so if they can destroy it along with the crystal, then that should be enough to clear this test. However, Nagumo is busy dealing with a horde of ice monsters right now, so Koki says he will handle it. Kokai runs up and uses a divine slash to destroy the monster's eye. However, the tortoise fires a blast at Koki in retaliation, but Suzu creates a barrier to protect everyone from it. The tortoise's eye is already starting to regenerate, so he realizes he won't be able to take this thing down unless he finishes it off in a single blow. And Koki has the perfect move for the job. If he uses Divine Wrath, it should be enough to destroy the tortoise entirely, but it's going to take some time for him to prepare himself, so he asks Shizuku and Ryutaro to keep the monster busy in the meantime. Shizuku and Ryutaro charge forward to distract the tortoise by slicing its legs and smashing its face in. And once Koki is finally done charging his attack, he leaps forward and stabs the tortoise with so much force that it crumbles to pieces in one hit. As the dust settles, Koki is glad that he finally did something useful, but unfortunately, it looks like he failed to completely destroy the core because an ice bird flies down and grabs the core's remains. If that bird manages to place the core back into the wall, then they are going to have to start this whole fight over from the beginning. So Koki tries to use another celestial slash to destroy it for good. However, he's so exhausted that he can barely stand. Luckily, just as the ice bird is about to return the core to the wall, Shizuku manages to slash it to pieces, officially ending the challenge and revealing the exit. The exit leads everyone to a hall of mirror-like ice, but as they are walking, Koki begins to hear a strange voice in his head, so he's starting to get worried. He tells everybody that he just heard a voice in his head asking him if he's satisfied with himself, but none of them heard any voices, so they all look at him like he's crazy and brush it off as his exhaustion from the last fight causing him to hallucinate. Hajime is the only one who is really taking him seriously since he knows the kind of trick the labyrinth can pull, so he asks Shia and Yui to be on the lookout for anything strange. Koki goes up to Hajime and tries to convince him that he isn't imagining things, but Hajime already believes him, so he tells everyone that they shouldn't brush off Koki's symptoms so casually. This is most likely part of the test, so sooner or later they'll all start hearing voices of their own. A little while later, Koki hears the voice in his head again, but this time it's not just him. Everyone is hearing a voice in their head, and the voices are taunting them with their deepest insecurities. The voice in Hajime's head is saying that a freak like him has no place in Japan anymore, and if he's being honest with himself, hearing that actually hurts a little. After everything he has done, including all the murder and destruction, it would be harder for him to consider himself a human anymore, so maybe there really is no way he could return to his life back on Earth. But there's nothing he can do about it now, so he just represses the dark thoughts like he always does and keeps moving forward. They eventually come to the end of the hallway and find a gate there, but even though everyone goes through at the same time, when Hajime steps out on the other side, he realizes they've all been separated, but this isn't the first time this has happened, so he's sure everyone will be fine. He continues walking forward until he comes across a reflective piece of ice, and after taking a long and hard look at himself, the reflection stares back at him. This would be startling to anyone else, but Hajime was kind of expecting this to happen at some point after what Koki experienced earlier. The clone is surprised that Hajime figured it out so quickly, so he steps out and says it's time for Hajime to face himself. The two begin fighting, and they are evenly matched against one another, so no matter how many times they shoot or kick each other, no one is making any progress. As the fight goes on, the clone begins taunting Hajime and asks him if he really believes he still has a home back in Japan. The clone then throws a bunch of grenades at him, so Hajime dodges and pulls out a missile launcher, but the clone does the same. As they blast each other, the clone tells Hajime to admit that he's afraid that his family and friends back home will reject him, and even if he leaves behind his lonely lifestyle, it won't change that fact that his hands are soaked in the blood of countless people. The first time Hajime ever killed a person, he told himself he didn't feel anything. But the truth is that while he may not have felt guilty over killing an enemy, he definitely felt fear from what he had become. As the clone says this, it shoots Hajime's guns out of his hands and closes the distance to land a final shot in Hajime's chest. But Hajime counters with a pinky shot and knocks him back into a wall. He's getting a little tired of listening to the clone talk so much, but he knows the clone isn't just making stuff up. Everything the clone has said so far was gotten from deep within Hajime's heart, so he really is scared that he might not be accepted when he gets home. But regardless of what people think of him, he is going to continue pushing forward. The copy doesn't understand how Hajime could be overpowering it because it knows for a fact that Hajime hasn't overcome any of his dark emotions. The nature of this test is to make the challenger face their dark thoughts and emotions. If you overcome those dark emotions, then the copy will grow weaker and you will be able to win. But Hajime basically just shoved it to the back of his mind and said he'd deal with it in future. As a result, the clone should have strength equal to Hajime's since he is an exact copy, but Hajime clarifies that the clone is an exact copy of him from before he started fighting. This entire fight has given Hajime a chance to go up against his own combat techniques, and after facing himself for a while, he was able to optimize his attacks. So while the clone may have been a perfect copy at the start of the fight, Hajime simply got stronger, so the clone stands no chance. The clone thinks this is unfair because the whole point of this test is to make you confront your dark thoughts, learn about yourself, and grow as a person. But Hajime hasn't learned a single thing, he's just brute forcing his way through and ignoring his problems. But Hajime sees nothing wrong with dealing with his insecurities later, and there's no rule against passing the test like this, so he finishes the clone, and once the exit appears, he leaves. Meanwhile, as part of Yui's test, she is shown some memories from her past, long before Yui ever met Hajime. She was the queen in the vampire kingdom, and after a victorious battle, she was approached by her uncle. Her uncle was really worried about her when he found out she went into battle on her own, so he tells her that her infinite regeneration is making her careless. Yui apologizes for acting without informing him ahead of time, but her uncle isn't particularly angry about it, he's just glad she's okay. Once they return to the castle, Yui asked her uncle if he would like to have dinner with her because she wanted to spend time with him, but unfortunately, her uncle has some important matters to take care of, so he is forced to decline her offer. Yui is disappointed, but she understands his reason, so she goes to have dinner alone and later sits in her throne room. However, moments later, the doors are blown open and Yui's uncle walks in. She is confused because she doesn't understand why he would barge in like this, but before she even realizes what's going on, her uncle has stabbed her through the heart with a sword. The entire time, his face remained expressionless, and he never gave Yui a reason for what he did before he sealed her away. So to this day, she has no idea why he betrayed her. Yui's clone tells her that if her beloved uncle was able to betray her like that, then it's only a matter of time before the rest of her friends do the same thing to her. But Yui doesn't buy it for a second because she knows everyone loves her, so they'd never want to betray her. Meanwhile, Shia is battling her evil clone, and the clone is trying to weaken her will by reminding her of how her village and family members were enslaved because of her weakness. But Shia already went through a character arc and her people have been saved, so the manipulation tactic doesn't work against her, and she is easily able to smash her clone into submission. Back to Yui, her clone asks her if she ever thought about the reason her uncle chose to seal her away instead of killing her. Yui doesn't know what the clone is talking about since she believes the reason she was sealed away was because she can't be killed. However, the clone digs deep through her memories and reminds her that she is not truly immortal. There is a definitive way to permanently kill Yui, so the fact that her uncle didn't use it on her means he had a reason for sealing Yui away. This revelation is enough to rattle Yui a little and make her question a lot of things, but it changes nothing about how she feels about Hajime or the others, so her resolve remains solid and she is able to defeat her clone. As the exit opens, Shia suddenly stumbles into the room and she's glad to see that Yui was able to defeat her clone as well. But while Yui didn't succumb to any negative emotions, her clone did make her realize something important, so she has a favor to ask of Shia. Now that she knows she can be killed, she wants to ask Shia to take care of Hajime in case anything were to happen to her. However, Shia simply refuses to accept that and slaps Yui in the face. Yui tries to explain that she just found out that she can die, so she just wanted to make preparations in case something happened to her. But Shia thinks it's absurd that Yui would even think of saying something as pessimistic as that, so she plans to smack some sense into her. Meanwhile, Kaori is facing her clone in another room, and her clone tries to break her down by pointing out how jealous Kaori is of Yui. Hajime always treats Yui special, and Kaori has been trying to catch up ever since. She even abandoned her old body just so she could be strong enough to stay by Hajime's side, yet he still hasn't accepted her love for him. However, despite Kaori's strong negative emotions, the clone isn't able to overpower her because she doesn't let those emotions dictate who she is. As jealous as she is of Yui, she would still miss her if she wasn't around. Instead of letting her jealousy lead her down a dark path, Kaori uses it to motivate herself to become better so she can stand alongside the others as equals. Now that she has her negative emotions under control, Kaori is about to finish off her clone, but suddenly Shia and Yui come crashing through the wall, and even the clone is shocked. Yui was trying to explain her reasoning for a few minutes, but now she's just pissed, so Yui and Shia both come at each other with everything they have, causing a lot of destruction in the process. At one point, Kaori's clone gets taken out in the crossfire, so she technically passed her test, and once Shia and Yui have tired themselves out, Shia is finally willing to have a normal conversation. Shia got angry because if Yui is asking her to take care of Hajime for her, then that means she believes she's going to die at some point, but Shia doesn't want to live in a world without Yui. Yui now understands why Shia was so upset, so she promises that she has no intention of letting herself die. No matter what comes their way, she says they'll face it together as a team. But while their resolution was sweet and all, Kaori is still upset at both of them because they ruined her test. Koki is up against his clone and he's losing badly. The clone has looked deep into Koki's heart and it was practically a jackpot of insecurities, mostly directed at Hajime. Koki hates how strong Hajime is, how everyone trusts him so much, and how he always seems to have the answers. And it just so happens that Hajime shows up at that moment, so the clone uses the opportunity and tells Koki that all of his problems will be solved if he just gets rid of Hajime. Hajime sees where this is going, so he tries to snap Koki out of it before he does something he will regret. But instead of realizing that he needs to become stronger if he wants to be the hero, Koki continues to be a disappointment and gives into his dark thoughts, now believing Hajime is the source of all his problems. By this point, everyone else has successfully completed their tests, so Koki is the only one still struggling. Hajime tries to explain to Koki that his anger is misplaced, but Koki is too far gone to listen to reason. He believes that Hajime must have brainwashed everyone into liking him, so he fuses with his dark self and says he will kill him. However, even with a dark emotion buff, Koki is still way weaker than Hajime, so in a matter of seconds, he is overwhelmed and knocked out. Hajime doesn't hate Koki or anything, but he also doesn't like him enough to forgive Koki for attempting to kill him, so he raises his gun to finish him off. But the others ask him to spare Koki's life because they don't want to see him die. Hajime eventually decides to let him live, so Kaori begins healing Koki's wounds, but Hajime tells her not to heal him completely because it'd be annoying to deal with him if he regained consciousness right now. Since this challenge has technically been cleared, they all head through the final gate, which leads them to the labyrinth checkpoint. And once they arrive at the checkpoint, they are welcomed into the rest area, and all those who pass the test are infused with metamorphosis magic, which is everyone except Koki. All the others only feel a light breeze, but since Hajime and Yui have all 8 God Age magics, their brains are suddenly flooded with information because they are now able to use concept magic. It is so overwhelming that the two of them scream out in pain and collapse on the spot. A few hours later, Hajime and Yui wake up, and after everyone has gathered, they inform them that they'd learnt concept magic. But to be specific, all they got was the prerequisite to use concept magic. In order to truly utilize concept magic, an intricate understanding of all the different types of God Age magic is necessary. Hajime's creation magic is going to be vital in the execution of the concept that they have in mind, but he can't do it on his own, so he is going to need Yui to help him control the magic. And while they are working on it, they ask Shia to make sure they aren't disturbed, especially since they aren't sure how Koki will behave once he wakes up. A few minutes later, Koki wakes up and he seems to be back to his senses because the first thing he asks everyone to tell him where Hajime is because he wants to apologize for the way he acted in the dungeon. It's good that he realizes what he did was crazy, but his feelings about Hajime haven't changed, so he is still very jealous. However, he now recognizes that being jealous isn't going to help him get any stronger, especially not now that everyone has acquired metamorphosis magic except him. Just then, they all hear an explosion coming from the room Hajime and Yui are working in, so they rush to go check on them and find Hajime and Yui still in the middle of their spell. In the light of the spell, they all see the horrors that Hajime had to endure in Orcus and everything he had to do to make sure he got out alive. The weeks he spent in the Orcus labyrinth are what shaped his will to survive and go home, and that same will is what gives shape to the concept magic. So in one bright flash of light, a magic key is created. The concept Hajime and Yui imbued into it allows the key to open a gateway to any location of their choice, and after a quick test, Hajime confirms that its portals can transport them back to Japan. This is terrific news, but before they go back, Hajime plans to work on an artifact to prevent them from getting resummoned. And in the meantime, Suzu still plans to go confront Eri, and the others plan to help her, so Hajime creates an ice dragon, and they all ride off the mountain together. The end.